Despite having the world's most powerful navy, the United States cannot force the Strait of Hormuz open, which every U.S. military expert knew would be closed if Iran was attacked. This is why the U.S. Navy is miles away, and it is why America's NATO allies are refusing to participate. The Iranians may have suffered the brutal shock and awe of the United States military, but they have been preparing for decades. And as the U.S. is already running low on weapons, Iran has plans for a long-term asymmetrical war, a defensive fight for their very existence. Iran has the moral high ground, and they are holding practically all the cards. By his own admission, Trump expected a quick, decisive victory. He ignored warnings from experts and instead listened to his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, who is wanted by the International Criminal Court for war crimes. With a smile on his face, the President of the United States has said that it's fun to kill the Iranians and that they are genetically inferior. By any historical standard, America has never had a president speak in such a manner. It has been confirmed that the United States has murdered almost 200 schoolgirls with Tomahawk missiles fired at an elementary school. Trump said he can live with it, and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said there would be no quarter, no mercy. While ongoing U.S.-Iran nuclear talks were taking place in Geneva, Israel launched major airstrikes against Iran, followed by the U.S. Iran and the U.S. began negotiations again in Geneva early last February, and Iran agreed to degrade its nuclear stockpiles. 2 days after negotiations ended, Trump attacks Iran. Deceptive diplomacy has been used to attack Iran twice in the past year. It would be unreasonable for them to trust anything that the U.S. and Israel have to say. And it only encourages Iran to develop nuclear weapons, which they have yet to do. During the Korean War, the United States targeted the civilian population, killing approximately 20% of them, and destroyed nearly every major city in a scorched earth strategy, which included targeting dams to destroy the agricultural economy. This resulted in North Korea developing their own nuclear deterrent, a predictable outcome to an existential threat. And Trump recently admitted what the whole world already knows, that Israel has their own nuclear weapons. So why on earth would Iran not want to build their own? The U.S. Director of National Intelligence, Joe Kent, just submitted his letter of resignation. He wrote Trump that it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful lobby, and illustrated how, early in this administration, high-ranking Israeli officials and influential members of the American media deployed a misinformation campaign that wholly undermined your America First platform and sowed pro-war sentiments to encourage a war with Iran. This echo chamber was used to deceive you into believing that Iran posed an imminent threat to the United States, and that should you strike now, there was a clear path to a swift victory. This was a lie, and is the same tactic the Israelis used to draw us into the disastrous Iraq war that cost our nation the lives of thousands. He ended his resignation by writing, "I pray that you will reflect upon what we are doing in Iran and who we are doing it for. The time for bold action is now. You can reverse course and chart a new path for our nation, or you can allow us to slip further toward decline and chaos. You hold the cards." On the subject of Israel, the U.S. public discourse has changed dramatically. How this can overcome AIPAC's influence over an Epstein-compromised Congress is yet to be seen. But our founding fathers would certainly argue that a government of criminal child rapists should be abolished rather than allowed to drag the entire world into chaos and war. Trump is not known for being a reasonable man when it comes to humility. And as Alexander Dugin recently wrote, Trump is now totally free. Nothing can destroy his reputation more than it is destroyed already. No publication of Epstein files concerning his alleged criminal actions can make his image worse. Greg Reese reporting.
Yep, I guess what he said is true. If you think about it, Trump has done all the damage to himself. Self-inflicted. And hurting his own image on the world stage, I think, is beyond the place where he can come back from it at this point. if you ask me. Anyways, thought that was a good Reese report. Hello and welcome. This is Doug Diamond, your host for the Diamond Report Live. It is 9:07 p.m. on 3/22/26. Hope you guys have had a good week. Let's take a look at the news. Got lots to look at tonight as normal. And to start with this first one here, Trump issues 48-hour ultimatum to Iran, or Iran, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Trump's issued the ultimatum to Iran. It was done via social media. Of course, they're, I'm sure, waiting on him to post various things on his Truth Social account, because that's how you communicate these days, apparently, as the President of the United States. So this article came out yesterday. So we're well into the 48 hours, and I think you'll see what's been going on here as we move forward tonight. If Iran doesn't fully open without threat the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours from this exact point in time, which was yesterday, the United States of America will hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest one first. Hal says, word on intelligence communication circuits is reporting that Iran will likely target and destroy desalination plants to destroy Israel's fresh water supply if Trump makes good on his threat. So Israel's fresh water supply, according to what Hal's saying here. And then this one from IranInternational.com. Trump threatens to obliterate Iran's power plants if Hormuz doesn't reopen in 48 hours. Trump's issued a warning on Saturday that if Iran does not fully reopen the strait without threat within 48 hours, Washington will hit and obliterate the country's power plants, starting with the largest. Trump demanded Tehran restore safe passage through the vital oil waterway in a Truth Social post yesterday. I don't think they're going to go for it. Do you? It says Iran's parliament speaker hails Dimona strike as new phase in war with Israel. We're going to look at that as well. This strike in Dimona, which is also, I guess, in Israel. So we've got further articles here on this particular site that I came across, IranInternational.com. And then this from RT, Iran vows to target the region's water and energy infrastructure if U.S. strikes power plants. Trump demanded on Saturday that the strait be reopened within 48 hours. Iran warned it would target energy and water infrastructure across the Middle East, following Trump's threat yesterday to strike Iran's power plants unless the strait is fully reopened within 48 hours. So, the threats are flying, and I'm guessing, sounds like, at least to me, a game of chicken. I think Trump will be the one to actually blink here, and not that he won't do what he's saying. I think he will, but I do think that they're going to do exactly what they're saying as well. We keep seeing these steps up the escalation ladder, as it were. So I think things will continue to escalate here, unfortunately. So this is an article on RT. And then let's see here. Reports flooding in. This is earlier today on Hal's website. Reports flooding in. U.S. and Israel have begun attacking the Iranian electric infrastructure already. So he didn't even allow the 48 hours. So this is why Trump cannot be believed. He continues to lie publicly. It's very difficult to get accurate information from inside Iran, according to Hal here. At 3:44 p.m. Eastern U.S. time today, Sunday, reports began flooding in, saying that the U.S. and Israel have begun attacking Iranian electric infrastructure and asking, what happened to the 48 hours Trump talked about? Well, he lied. That's what he does. Hal says, I cannot verify or refute the claims that the Iran electric infrastructure is under attack. I can, however, verify the following. International affairs expert Sanubari warns that the Islamic Republic's cyber doctrine has effectively bypassed the need for intercontinental kinetic platforms by securing deep state and deep access to the U.S. power grid. The announcement by hacker groups called Handala within the last hour indicates a successful breach of the U.S. electrical infrastructure, creating a desynchronization of the traditional deterrent model. By weaponizing industrial control systems and SCADA networks, the resistance has established a virtual front line within the American interior. Sanubari goes on to say, any attempt to strike Iranian domestic power nodes will trigger a reciprocal collapse across the United States, providing that the digital nervous system of the enemy is now as exposed as their regional radar anchors. If attacks against Iran's electric grid have already begun, then it must therefore be possible that Iran hackers may commence attacking the internal U.S. power grid almost immediately. Portions of the U.S. could be without power as early as tonight. Now, Hal posted this on his site earlier today. So something to watch for. If power starts to go out across various portions of the U.S., one could possibly attribute it to this. It just depends on what happens. Now, oftentimes, Hal will announce things like this and they don't actually happen. So I'm hoping that will be the case again tonight. However, I just wanted to warn you guys up front that is being bandied about here, that apparently it's possible that Trump broke his word yet again and is already attacking Iran's electrical infrastructure. So we shall see, I suppose, huh? Of course, if that happens, if there are major blackouts across the U.S., it will be blamed on something else, I'm sure, just to make it look like Iran had nothing to do with it. So, but you'll know if it happens, won't you? Iran strikes the city of Dimona in Israel. So this is the other story. This came out yesterday. Iranian missiles have struck the city and town of Dimona in the Negev Desert. Northwest of the Dimona Nuclear Research Facility, the residences of Israeli nuclear scientists are believed to have been the targets of the attack. The image above is reportedly to the neighborhood in Dimona hit by the missiles. Israeli air defenses failed to stop the attack. And here it is here. You can tell it looks like residential areas there. The Dimona Nuclear Research Facility is east-southeast of this town by about 13 kilometers. By striking the city of Dimona from Iran, the Iranians have proven that their missiles can also easily reach the nuclear research facility, which is where Israeli nuclear weapons are developed, built, and stored. Yes, and none of which was declared by Israel. No one's supposed to know that they have nukes too, but yet everyone does. Anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. The city of Dimona, and Iran is still firing missiles, wouldn't you know it? So, remains to be seen what happens there, but that's pretty interesting. Looks like they're going after, according to this anyway, going after the neighborhoods of those that are believed to be the nuclear scientists of Israel. Pretty interesting, huh? Old posting from 4chan outlines current Iran war just a little too well. So this was posted from June last year. Looks like the present ongoing war with Iran was predicted one day after the 12-day war ended. The prediction is eerily accurate so far. If it is correct, we are heading into losing 2 aircraft carriers, exchange of tactical nuclear weapons, and seeing open civil war inside the United States. What have we been saying on this show and so many other people as well? Those same things. Not necessarily 2 aircraft carriers, but we've been talking about they will false flag 1 at least. Now, whether Iran does it or whether Israel does it, we'll never know. But this is talking about 2 aircraft carriers, exchange of tactical nukes, and open civil war within the U.S. I'm assuming they mean over this war in Iran. I don't know. 12-day war. The 12-day war, an armed conflict between Iran and Israel, was fought from 13th of June to 24th of June 2025. The conflict involved Israeli airstrikes against Iranian military and nuclear facilities, Operation Rising Lion, and Iranian retaliation via missile and drone strikes called Operation True Promise 3, with U.S. involvement occurring near the end. Key details regarding the conflict. Conflict text: the war began on the 13th of June last year following a surprise attack by Israel, prompting a direct large-scale confrontation between the two nations. Ceasefire. Under pressure from the U.S., both parties agreed to a ceasefire on the 24th of June, again last year. Involvement. The United States participated directly on the 22nd of June by striking the Iranian nuclear sites known as Operation Midnight Hammer. Yeah, and we were told that they got them all back then, remember? Well, they lied. I'm just adding that. Impact. The war resulted in significant casualties and damage within Iran and initiated a new phase of open warfare, according to analysis from the International Institute of Strategic Studies and reports from Simple English Wikipedia. One day after that war stopped, as reported above, the 12-day war stopped on the 24th of June last year. The very next day, the 25th, an anonymous posting on the internet web forum called 4chan outlined what was coming. The outline is a little too perfect so far. So here's what this says. Again, this was posted in June last year, after all that happened over in Iran. Israel breaks ceasefire and strikes Iran. Trump responds with B-2 bunker busters on nuclear sites. So I'm just going in order here. I'm going to read through all these. Iran hits all Gulf oil fields and U.S. bases, blocks Hormuz, oil prices skyrocket, blackouts in Africa and the third world. Not sure if we've seen that yet. U.S. sends 3 aircraft carriers, at least 2 sunk by Iran, Russia, and China using suicide tactics. So that obviously hasn't happened yet. U.S. tries amphibious invasion. First fails with massive casualties. Second attempt succeeds. Oil fields seized. Advance halts. U.S. Civil War begins. Anti-war bloc takes D.C. with military support. U.S. splits into 2 and retreats from the Middle East. So again, this is all pretty interesting, but clearly hasn't happened yet. Turkey betrays NATO and joins Russia-Iran-China alliance and attacks Israel. China invades Taiwan and Guam. North Korea invades South. Japan fails to stop it. India possibly flips sides. Russia invades Poland and the Baltics. Links to Kaliningrad. Finland and NATO invade Russia. Take St. Petersburg. How about that? This is a full-on world war at this point, I guess, according to this post. Europe collapses into riots, famine, and civil wars. Latin America allies with China and Russia. U.S. invaded from the south. Advance stops at Colorado. 50 to 150 tactical nukes used high in the atmosphere. Tsar bomb and 2 strategic nukes are used in Europe. Israel destroyed. Palestinians wiped with it, which many of them have already been wiped out by the Israelis, by Netanyahu and the gang. Air travel ends. Crime and chaos everywhere. 3 weeks of nuclear events. Fake alien invasion begins. MJ-12 releases synthetic alien soldiers. So this is really going full force here. PLFs hunt survivors. FEMA camps classify people as useful or undesirables. By 2027, 5 billion dead. Fake aliens defeated with help of real ones. This is really getting out there. One world government under MJ-12 and the UN. Dome of the Rock destroyed. Script complete. Well, they didn't build the third temple, and a few other little points here that I would add in, but I don't know. This is pretty unbelievable, but again, this is creepy, as Hal's saying here. I found this to be really creepy as to its accuracy. The first 5 seem to already be done. Israel breaks ceasefire and attacks Iran again. Done. Trump responds with the B-2 bunker busters on nuclear sites. Done. Yeah. Iran hits all Gulf oil fields and U.S. bases, blocks Hormuz. Done. Oil prices skyrocket, which that's happening now. U.S. sends 3 aircraft carriers. Done. Iran, Russia, and China sink at least 2 aircraft carriers. Not done yet, Hal says. So it goes on here. There's more. But it is interesting, and the dating of the post of this makes the whole thing very interesting, especially considering that the first 5 things or so are already completed. It's almost like it's someone's checklist. But anyway, I just wanted to point you guys to that in case you want to take a look. That's on HalTurnerRadioshow.com. It is a free and open to the public type of article. So have a look if you're interested in that. In the video that we started the show with tonight, mentioned the Joe Kent resignation, which I think is key. Someone of his stature, second in command, really, only to Tulsi Gabbard, stepping down. I think that's a pretty huge deal. And clearly a lot of people think that. Trump appointed counterterrorism director Joe Kent resigns in protest over U.S. war with Iran. Joe Kent, retired Green Beret with 11 combat deployments, former CIA paramilitary officer and Gold Star husband who lost his wife, Shannon, in a 2019 ISIS-claimed suicide bombing in Syria, broke with Trump and resigned from his position as director of the National Counterterrorism Center. He cited his opposition to Trump's war against Iran and framed his exit as a defense of the America First principles. Kent stated that Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation and that the conflict was initiated due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. Quote unquote. And boy, if you say those words, you are anti-Semitic. You can't criticize Israel. Mr. Kent, didn't you know that? Because if you do, if you say that they ever did anything wrong ever in their history, you are anti-Semitic. But again, it's a word that means nothing anymore. Just like calling someone a Nazi means nothing anymore. So anyway, they've so overused those words, none of it matters. But here's some further interviews, I guess, videos and things like that embedded here. And I don't see the Tucker interview, but it may be on here somewhere. Anyway, I did see a little bit of that on Tucker's channel on X. But yeah, I think Joe Kent deserves a Heroes Award in my book just because he's done the right thing. He's basically the only one in the administration that has thus far. So way to go, Joe. Anyway, that's on needtoknow.news. Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, has done an about-face on regime change wars. Yeah, disappointingly, she has gone along with Trump in this. Now, there have been some rumors that she may be stepping down soon. So we shall see if she's the next one to go, then we'll know why. Very much like Kent. So here's what this says, though. Jimmy Dore and Max Blumenthal criticized Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, after she changed her long-held position against regime change wars and now offers no resistance to Trump's unpopular war in Iran. Journalist Glenn Greenwald called her craven and desperate for power. Before joining Trump's cabinet, she introduced bills to limit presidential power and return the authority to declare war to Congress. J.D. Vance is silent against Trump's war, although he campaigned against regime change wars before the election. Yeah, but they're all being subservient to Trump at this point, unfortunately. Tulsi Gabbard declines to say whether Iran posed an imminent nuclear threat, claims that that's Trump's call, not the intel communities. Well, it clearly was not an imminent threat because they've been saying for 40-some years that they were on the verge of getting a nuclear program, a nuclear missile program, or enriching the uranium or whatever they're doing. They've been saying that for decades. Clearly, it was not an imminent threat. There's no question it was not an imminent threat, but they have made it so once Israel declared it was. That's all it took. Anyway, we'll see if Tulsi gets a backbone and also resigns, because personally I feel like that's all that's left for her to do at this point. But we'll see. We'll see. Needtoknow.news is where we are here. And then this one, also on same site, Netanyahu declares Iran's nuclear program and missile production destroyed, denies Israel influenced Trump. Of course he would. And of course, that there is yet another proof of life video, which is what this is. See, he's not dead. See. Netanyahu issued a video that shows him answering questions in another proof of life video. He sure had to do a lot of those. He denied that Israel influenced Trump to enter the Iranian war. Netanyahu claimed that Iran no longer has the ability to enrich uranium. So how about that? The issue's over, according to him. So who's next? Turkey? Iran has launched retaliatory strikes against energy infrastructure in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Kuwait following an Israeli attack on Iran's South Pars gas field. So here's a clip, a couple different ones here. Let's see I haven't actually seen this. I've seen some still images. I do know that while he appears to be standing at a podium, looking down, talking to a group of people, there's no one actually in the room, according to what I've heard and noticed. From what I can tell, there's no questions being taken. It looks like he's addressing people just based on his eye contact. You know, you would assume that he is looking at a room full of people seated in front of him. But apparently there was no one in the room. So what's that say? That tells me that I personally don't know if this is really him or not. And as we said last week, you know, where's BB? Does anyone know? Is that really him? Is he alive or dead? No one seems to really have that definitive answer, other than the proof of life videos we keep seeing. So I don't know. I don't know if that's really him or if it's AI or what that is. They need to get him standing with, standing in front of a camera with today's newspaper, reading the headlines and the date so that we can see exactly, as he's holding it with his 5 fingers in each hand, what the date of the newspaper is and see that live for the world. And I don't know how else you would prove that it is, that he's still alive, that he's still amongst the living. I mean, because there's still going to be people that say, no, he's not. And there was a report earlier last week saying that, in fact, he is still alive. He is in a coma somewhere in a hospital. So who knows? Lots of rumors going around. No one seems to know for sure. Anyway, that one is on needtoknow.news. Got several from that site tonight. This one was an interesting one, just getting away from the Iranian skirmish, everything that's going on over there. This one, another James O'Keefe, huge story. California homeless are bribed with cash and drugs for registering to vote. Now, this is a video that's embedded here, and I did see this, actually. It's pretty interesting. Let's just say they were all caught red-handed, and he seems to think, based on the fact that he's got multiple instances of the crimes being committed here on video, in this video, that because Gavin Newsom has addressed this issue already, he seems to think that there will be some punishment of some sort. Somebody's going to go to jail. And he might be right, but it will be the little people, not the people actually running the show. That's always the way it is. So here's what this is. James O'Keefe went undercover to Skid Row in downtown Los Angeles to expose how homeless people are being paid by NGOs in cash and drugs to register to vote and sign election petitions. Many of the petitioners had no understanding of the petition's purpose that they were advertising. The NGO representatives also instructed individuals to use fake addresses. The Weingart Center, which received hundreds of millions in public funding, is on tape directing people to where the fraudulent petitioners are located and directing homeless individuals to petitioners and coaching plausible deniability. Petitioners admitted that they're paid from $7 to $10 per signature, sometimes earning $1,000 or more per day. Wow, that's some pretty good money there. Collecting signatures from individuals with minimal knowledge of what they were signing, paying per signature, and encouraging fake addresses violates federal and state election law and is proof of fraud happening in California. Yeah, so that's only the top little surface of what's going on here. The interesting part that isn't really in here in this article is something that will come out in the coming days. And he's already revealed it. James O'Keefe has already talked about this. And that is that these homeless people, not only are they being bribed to register to vote and to sign these petitions, but they are also being paid to go vote as legal registered voters using their information. So they're given a legal Californian's name and voter registration information and told to go vote in their place. That's the next thing. So that one will be huge when that comes out in the next few days. He's already explained that that's next. He's got all that on tape too. So this is really just part one. So stay tuned for that. So James O'Keefe doing really good work out there. And then this one, Kentucky, bill that gives immunity to Monsanto and Bayer for glyphosate is close to becoming law. Last month, Trump invoked the Defense Production Act to promote domestic production of glyphosate-based pesticides, potentially giving manufacturers immunity from lawsuits over alleged health impacts and inadequate warning labels. Bayer purchased Monsanto and its glyphosate-based weed killer Roundup in 2018. Thomas Massey said that Bayer has spent over $9 million lobbying Congress and the executive branch for exemption from liability for harm its chemicals like glyphosate might cause. He said that both the federal government and state legislatures are under siege from lobbyists representing Bayer, a foreign corporation, to obtain immunity from prosecution. Of course they are. Both chambers of the Kentucky State Legislature passed Senate Bill 199 that would make any pesticide registered with the Kentucky Department of Agriculture or the Environmental Protection Agency, or as I call it, the Environmental Pollution Agency, that has an EPA-approved label automatically fit Kentucky's warning label requirements. This will make it very difficult to sue for injury from pesticides, at least in Kentucky. So Kentucky is all in with the cover-up. They're all in with Monsanto and Bayer. So lovely, huh? And you thought some of the politicians in Kentucky might actually give a hoot about people, but turns out they don't. At least not the ones that are passing this within the state. So not good. Catherine Austin Fitts on programmable money, poisoning the public, and depopulation. And, of course, the Iran war. Catherine Austin Fitts explains that the Iran war is part of a global reset to implement a totalitarian control grid through programmable money, digital IDs, and surveillance infrastructure like flock cameras, all designed to strip Americans of constitutional rights and enable centralized control of movement, spending, and even food access. Austin Fitts warns that the U.S. is deliberately destroying its reserve currency status by proving it cannot protect sea lanes, accelerating de-dollarization, and inflation while simultaneously poisoning the population through glyphosate, COVID jabbies, and nanotechnology to lower life expectancy and enable the Internet of Bodies control. So yes, W-ban. Many of you guys follow that whole thing. Rightfully so. She further reveals that the $21 trillion missing from the Pentagon is driving intentional depopulation policies, and that the real solution is for citizens to use cash, grow their own food, and stop financially supporting the parasitic system. Despite the grim picture, Fitts remains optimistic that collective action and prayer can defeat the control grid if people are willing to get off the couch and also use cash whenever possible. Yeah, that's unfortunately being outlawed more and more places. Not really outlawed, but being looked down upon in various stores. Some stores won't take cash anymore. So anyway, needtoknow.news article then says this one, 56% of Americans now suspect the CV-19 jabbies caused mass deaths. Rasmussen reports performed a credible nationally representative poll that confirms most Americans, 56%, believe the CV-19 jabbies have killed many people and they want accountability from the CDC and government health leaders. Yes, well, are they going to get it? No, I don't think so. This shows that what was once called a conspiracy theory has become the mainstream view. The majority of Americans now believe VAXX and their harms, VAXX harms, are real and widespread. Partisan divides remain. 70% of Republicans, 46% of Democrats, and 54% of independents think that VAXXs likely caused deaths, but the skepticism crosses party lines and racial groups. And then Nicholas Holscher reported this: as the majority of Americans wake up to the catastrophic death toll from the CV-19 jabbies, so are lawmakers. Idaho Bill S-1346 to ban mRNA shots for kids and pregnant women just passed the Senate Health and Welfare Committee and is advancing. This could be the first ever moratorium. So way to go, Idaho. That's good news. Anyway, further information on this one, on this article here on needtoknow.news. So 56% of Americans now suspect that those jabbies caused mass deaths. 56%. So that's better, but where's everyone else? Should be 99%, if you ask me. All right, and then one more from needtoknow.news. Paul Ehrlich, author of The Population Bomb, dies at 93. He was evil and wrong. Yep, he sure was. Paul Ehrlich, the father of population control, whose best-selling but wildly speculative 1968 book called The Population Bomb was used to justify government and NGO programs to push contraception, normalize abortion, encourage mass sterilization, and preach anti-family rhetoric, wreaking untold damage across the globe. Has died from complications due to cancer at age 93. He believed that the population was too high for the earth to sustain it. He advocated for mandatory population control laws and supported abortion in prison for people with too many children. Prison for people with too many. I guess he gets to decide how many too many is, I suppose. He proposed that overpopulation could lead to cannibalism and more deranged ideas. No, that is happening, but it's because of importing the turd worlders. That's why. His ideology led to the one-child policy in China and forced sterilizations in India. Since Ehrlich made his erroneous prediction of mass starvation due to overpopulation, the world population has doubled and the global malnutrition has been cut in half. So not only was he wrong, he was way wrong. But they are still, the globalists in charge are still basing a lot of what they're doing on what he said. Depopulationism and so forth. So, pretty interesting. But yeah, he has made the jump to somewhere. I don't know where. I would say hyperspace, but I don't know if that's where he went. Anyway, yeah, Paul Ehrlich. All right, and then got a few articles here from the Liberty Beacon. Join the U.S. military. Kill and die for Israel. No thanks. Here's the new Uncle Sam, if you didn't know. Once again, U.S. service members are thrown into an unjust war for a foreign power. Trump's decision to join Israel in launching a regime change war on Iran has so far cost the lives of at least 13 American service members. Let's see. This is dated today. So who knows what the real number is? At least 13 American service members. More than 200 have been wounded. Dozens seriously enough to require evacuations to military hospitals in Europe and in the U.S. Among them are individuals who suffered traumatic brain injuries, burns, and shrapnel wounds. One was facing potential amputation of an arm or leg. So again, that's just what we're being told. So who knows what the truth is? As much as these service members and their families are victims of Iran's justified retaliation for a surprise attack perpetrated amid ongoing negotiations, they're victims of a betrayal perpetrated by their president and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who cast them into an unconstitutional war of aggression, packaged in lies and initiated to advance the agenda of a foreign government while undermining the security of their own country. Of course, U.S. casualties comprise a small subset of the total bloodshed. In executing this unjust war, Americans have collectively inflicted far more death and dismemberment than they've endured, teaming up with their Israeli counterparts to kill more than 3,000 Iranians, including some 150 schoolgirls, mostly between age 7 and 12, whose school was destroyed by a Tomahawk cruise missiles at the war's very start. Yes, but those girls, they had it coming. Obviously, they were going to grow up to become terrorists. So we had to wipe them out, right? That's what Israel would say. Though it should have already been apparent, Operation Epic Fury, or as I call it, Operation Epic Fail, should make clear that service members' good intentions aside, combat waged under the U.S. flag rarely has anything to do with American security. Moreover, and I say this as a former Army Reserve enlistee and regular Army officer, this is written by Brian McGlinchey, I guess is how you say it. Anyone thinking of starting or extending a military career should understand that their government may send them to be killed, maimed, or psychologically damaged, and to slaughter foreign innocents, so long as it helps those in power remain in the good graces of the extremists who rule Israel and their powerful collaborators inside the United States. So, he's not wrong, the author of this article. Iran was not developing a nuclear weapon. Iran did not stray from the 2015 nuclear deal until Trump did. Iran wasn't the problematic negotiation partner. These are just the different bullet points that are listed in this article. Iran hasn't been waging war in the United States for the last 47 years. Yeah, Trump keeps saying that. Again, another clear lie here that he's telling. And then, yeah, shattering the Middle East for greater Israel. Here's the arm patch that you'll see on some of the IDF soldiers. Yep. Killing innocents, sparking global catastrophe. So again, he's not wrong. Yep, the new Uncle Sam. There he is right there. Bombshell. Bill Clinton and Epstein info drops. So I looked at this just wondering if this was, yet again, new information, or is this just something that's been recycled? But from what I can gather, it appears to be somewhat new. I had not heard this anyway. Rep. Anna Paulina Luna appeared on Bill Maher's show and confirmed that Epstein document dumps have long hinted at the former president wasn't just flying on the Lolita Express, meaning Bill Clinton. He was operating under an entirely different identity in the files. This revelation lands as the House Oversight Committee presses forward with its investigation following the Justice Department's release of millions of pages under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, signed by Trump. Lawmakers and victims are still pushing for the remaining 2.5 million documents that remain hidden or heavily redacted. So yeah, which will probably never see the light of day, I'm guessing. Just a little sidebar there from me. Bill Clinton's connection to Epstein runs deep and documented. The former president flew on Epstein's private jet multiple times in the early 2000s, often for Clinton Foundation-related trips, and maintained social ties with both Epstein and Maxwell long after red flags emerged. He has repeatedly denied any knowledge of Epstein's crimes or visits to the island. Yeah. So here's a few clips embedded here. It says, Rep. Luna laid it out plainly during the interview. When Bill Maher asked questions regarding bringing Hillary in, said, "You have Hillary Clinton come in, ? This is like 3 gazillion pages of men behaving badly, and the witness you want is a woman?" Luna shot back, saying she was issued a bipartisan subpoena, meaning the Democrats wanted her in, because Bill Clinton was all over those logs. She continued, "We can get the whole Jeffrey Epstein ties because I actually talked to Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton specifically about that, presenting them with the actual document that showed that he had a complete other alias. What was Bill Clinton doing with another alias? The question hangs heavy. In the files of convicted child sex trafficker, a second identity isn't a coincidence. It's a red flag screaming for answers. This isn't the first time that the Clintons have scrambled to contain the Epstein fallout. Bill Clinton's chief of staff raged after half-naked photos of the former U.S. president surfaced in the latest Epstein drop. So, yeah, anyway, that's pretty interesting. It's the first I've heard of that. So he had a whole other identity, apparently, in these files. And I was joking. I think it was just last week when I said he was probably second in charge. Maybe I wasn't wrong on that. I don't know. If he was using a completely different name, wouldn't surprise me one bit. Yeah, it's funny when they showed the video clips of him in the deposition and they showed the pictures that he was supposed to look at, and he kind of looked over his glasses or took them off or something just to see the pictures better. It looked like he was reminiscing on the good old days. I don't know if you remember that, but that's what it looked like to me. It looked like he was remembering how much fun he had. So I think that says volumes. All right, and then this one from the Liberty Beacon. UK COVID inquiry finds lockdowns may have cost thousands of lives. Finally, an admission, our COVID response was a calamitous mistake. Inquiry finds public messaging should have balanced infection control, with reassurance it did the opposite. UK COVID inquiry finds that lockdowns may have cost thousands of lives. So this is actually a post from Zero Hedge, but it's here on the Liberty Beacon. The authoritarian COVID lockdowns and stay-at-home orders sold as life-saving measures have been unmasked once again as a deadly failure of big government outreach and overreach. A new UK COVID-19 inquiry report has concluded that the relentless stay home, protect the NHS, and save lives messaging likely cost thousands of lives by convincing people they should not get access to health services. Yes, we know this, so I'm wondering if I should keep going here. But interesting that this is coming out, though. Report states plainly it's clear that during the pandemic, the fake pandemic, I would add, worsening delays in diagnosis and treatment led to increased ill health and suffering, and in some cases cost lives. Some patients waited so long their conditions became untreatable, with permanent loss of mobility. Yeah, especially after they started taking the little stabbies, right? It's important that government communication campaigns do not deter those in need from accessing healthcare. A little too late on that one. Anyway, further info here, stuff we already knew. But yet another study. They've had to spend probably who knows how much money studying this, and we already knew it was true, didn't we? Former FBI Director Robert Bob Mueller dies, age 81. Yeah, so this happened, I guess it was yesterday or the day before. Robert Mueller, former FBI Director, Special Counsel who led the high-profile investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. election and potential ties to Trump's campaign, has died at age 81, passing away Friday night. So there it is. Friday night, according to AP. No cause of death was disclosed. So interesting, huh? I think the timing on this is really, really interesting. But then you got Trump chiming in. Robert Mueller is dead, and I'm glad he's dead, he says. So no love lost there, I guess. So yes, he's heavily involved in this whole Russian investigation, which was completely ridiculous. As part of the Clinton campaign, deep state smear campaign legitimized and laundered through U.S. intelligence and the FBI, Mueller was appointed special counsel in May 2017 and was tasked with examining Russian efforts to interfere in the 2016 election, which was all thought up by Hillary Clinton and them. I'm just adding that. And any coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia. The probe, which lasted nearly 2 years and cost an estimated $32 million to produce a 448-page report, released in redacted form in April 2019, key findings included no conspiracy or coordination. The report concluded there was insufficient evidence to establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. Russian interference confirmed, is what they're saying here. It detailed extensive Russian operations, including hacking, Democratic emails, and a social media disinformation campaign by the Internet Research Agency. Obstruction of justice. Mueller did not reach a conclusion on whether Trump obstructed justice, stating that the office could not exonerate him, but also could not charge a sitting president under DOJ policy. The report outlined 10 potential instances of obstruction, but left the matter to Congress or to future prosecutors. Trump and his allies repeatedly described the investigation as a witch hunt and a hoax, pointing to the lack of collusion charges against campaign officials. So, and then mentioning some of those folks. So, yes, we know. Anyway, not a good guy. And Trump has pretty much said how he feels about the whole thing. He's glad he's dead. So, not too surprised. And, we'll see if any of that truth actually comes out, although much of it has. And some in the mainstream media are doubling down, saying, no, it was all true. And Trump was the wrong, he was the bad guy in all this and everything. So, I don't know. Which Trump is a bad guy, I'm convinced at this point. But not for those reasons. Not because of Russia collusion. I think that was nonsense. Anyway, that was a Liberty Beacon article, and we've got two here from technocracy.news. The end of debt by tokenizing assets. Larry the Fink is having a laugh here, I think at our expense. At all levels of society, debt is unsustainable. Everyone knows it. U.S. national debt has crossed $38.9 trillion. Annual deficits run above $1.7 trillion with no ceiling in sight. The war in Iran is pushing it still higher. Foreign creditors, Sweden, Denmark, India, and dozens of others are quietly reducing their treasury holdings. The old trick of rolling over debt by issuing new debt is running out of steam. So what is the plan? Not to fix the debt, but to replace the system that created it with something worse called real-world asset tokenization. So that's what this article is about here. In March 2026, BlackRock CEO, meaning Larry the Fink, declared that the tokenization of all assets is no longer a future vision, it's happening now. So all assets. Real estate, equities, bonds, all of it is moving onto the blockchain infrastructure. In January, he called for a single global blockchain to settle all assets worldwide. He flew to Washington on March 11th to make his case directly to the political elites. This is not a pitch, it's a policy rollout. Yeah, that's right. He's literally saying what's going to happen. He's saying what they're doing, not asking for permission, is my point. So yeah, this is leading to the one world economic system, isn't it? Thought that was pretty interesting. Technocracy.news is where that one is. And then this one too, IMEC, I-M-E-C. Trump's war with Iran is about global trade, period. I think it's about a little more than that, but this article is by Patrick Wood, the guy that runs this website. He says, I wrote this white paper to lay bare the myths surrounding the war in Iran and to expose the master plan to restructure global trade routes in order to dominate world trade. This is a tectonic shift in the geopolitical structure of the world. Further, this is the master plan for global technocracy, even down to making Gaza into the poster child for the technocratic state. If you cannot connect the dots here, then you will be left in the fog of delusion. The India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, IMEC, is being called one of the largest and most ambitious infrastructure projects in modern history. Trump called it one of the greatest trade routes in all of history. IMEC is not just a trade route, it's a control corridor. A fully integrated system of rails, roads, shipping lanes, ports, fiber optic cables, energy pipelines, and data centers stretching from India to Europe. Whoever controls the architecture of that system controls the flow of goods, energy, data, and money across 3 continents. And that is precisely why technocrats want it, and precisely why you should understand what it is and who is building it. IMEC is the commercial payoff of a decade of deliberate geopolitical engineering that runs directly through Jared Kushner, the Abrahamic Accords, and war with Iran, and the technocratic reconstruction of Gaza. Connect the dots, and the picture is unmistakable. So it goes into what all of that is about, how it all connects together into IMEC. Again, India, Middle East, Europe, and then economic corridor is what that's about. So very interesting, huh? But of course, I think some of that hinges on this Strait of Hormuz, the choke point of the IMEC. IMEC's eastern sea lane runs through the Persian Gulf. The Persian Gulf exits to the Arabian Sea through one bottleneck, the Strait of Hormuz. 33 kilometers wide, 1/5 of global petroleum liquids, more than 1/4 of all seaborne oil trade. Every tanker leaving the Gulf terminals that IMEC depends on must pass through the strait, unless Iran decides otherwise. Yeah, they should have thought of that before they went to war. Anyway, yeah, I think that is a pretty huge wrench in the system, don't you? As far as this IMEC trade route goes. I mean, especially if energy prices are going to be spiking soon, which sounds like they are. So look at this one. We often talk about plain issues, airliner issues. Well, this is a new one. I don't think I've ever heard this one before. A dead passenger allegedly stored in a heated galley for 13 hours on British Airways flight. A foul smell was reported. I would think. Airline says that all procedures were followed after a woman in her 60s died an hour into their flight going from Hong Kong to London. Air travelers are reacting with shock after a dead passenger's body was reportedly stored in a heated gallery for more than 13 hours on a long-haul flight. A woman in her 60s died about an hour after takeoff on British Airways flight BA32 from Hong Kong to London last Sunday. But the pilots continued on to Heathrow instead of turning back. The source told the outlet that the Airbus A350, the galley, had a heated floor, and by the end of the flight, there were claims of a foul smell that was present in that area. Wow. Obviously, the family with the woman were distraught, and so were the crew. Many wanted to return to Hong Kong, but to put it bluntly, if a passenger has already died, that is not viewed as an emergency. So welcome to British Airways, apparently. British Airways told Fox News Digital that its crew followed all procedures. Yeah, it's all totally normal. Nothing to see here. A customer sadly passed away on board, and our thoughts are with their family and friends at this difficult time, the airline said. We're supporting our crew, and all procedures were correctly followed. Yeah, their thoughts are with the family and friends, but we're going to wait for the next several hours while we go ahead and fly to London. So I think most people on the plane probably would have understood if you took the dead woman and turned the plane around and went back to Hong Kong. Seems like a source told The Sun that the discussion took place about what to do with the body, with the crew rejecting a request from the flight deck to lock it in the plane's bathroom. So that was one of the options. So clearly these people have taken a few too many COVID jabs, apparently. So they had to isolate the body, wrap it in materials, and move it to a galley at the rear of the plane. The outlet said that once the plane landed last Sunday, police asked the 331 passengers on board to stay in their seats for roughly 45 minutes while they investigated the onboard death. So they were kept on the plane for a little while. British Airways did not receive a formal complaint regarding the incident, but the Sun reported that some passengers took time off work to recover from the ordeal. You think? Wow. So yes, British Airways. If you die on their plane, you're not getting back home to your family for quite some time. I mean, wow. That is nuts. Is that further proof that we are living in the end times? I don't know, but it sure is weird. All right. This is from a website called Red State. Ridiculous California wildlife bridge aims to prevent inbred mountain lions, but will be a wildlife express lane. So here's the bridge. I guess it's just for the animals. This sounds like a bad animated, Pixar film or something. The tale of Gavin Gruesom's $114 million wildlife bridge in Southern California dominated political talk on Wednesday for good reason. As of this date, its projected cost has doubled, and the estimated completion date of 2025 is in the rear view mirror, all to ensure that less than 24 mountain lions can get to the other side of the road. This sounds like a chicken in the road, joke of some sort. 24 mountain lions can get to the other side of the road and mate with a lion that's not closely genetically related to. So yeah, you would not want inbred mountain lions for sure. You might have heard, so because you don't want inbred mountain lions, that means you as a California taxpayer means you have to pay millions and millions of dollars to keep that from happening. You might have heard something about it being called a butterfly bridge. Butterfly bridge. But that's not true. In fact, on the LA County Trails site about the bridge, formerly known as the Wallace-Annenberg Wildlife Crossing, butterflies aren't even mentioned as one of the species that will benefit from it. Instead, the site will focus on the mountain lion as the species most immediately at risk. So this is how crazy it's gotten in California. Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy noted the barrier faced by the Big Bad Freeway in a press release. Okay. Anyway, it goes into some of the details here. Unfortunately for the families living in the towns around the bridge who've lived through the deadly Woolsey and Palisades fires, the bridge will serve another purpose as a wildfire express lane. So this is one of the main concerns here, not just the fact that it's seemingly a bottomless money pit, but it's also going to now be a wildfire express lane. So we got to crank up the possibilities of more and more places being burned in California. It says not only are they wasting money that could be used for fire mitigation, but they're creating a contiguous bed of fuel to compromise the 101 fire break. And not surprisingly, it's brought to us by the exact same environmentalist nonprofits and public-private partnerships that allowed the Topanga State Park to become a fire trap. The same people who prevented the LA Fire Department from fully extinguishing the Lockman fire, January 1st, 2025, before it became the Palisades fire. So yes, you're in good hands, I guess, if you're in California. They're building $114 million bridges for mountain lions and for making sure that wildfires can continue on their way. Isn't that wonderful? All right. Londoners warned they are in the crosshairs of Iran's new 4,000-kilometer terror missiles, as opposed to the nicer, softer, gentler missiles, I guess. Iran struck Diego Garcia military base with a long-range missile. I don't think it actually hit, from what I understood, capable of reaching 4,000 kilometers, with the IDF warning Iranian missiles can now reach London, Paris, or Berlin. Israel has urged Londoners to watch out as we might be under threat from Iran's new 4,000-meter terror missiles. You'd have thought they could have come up with a better name than just terror missiles. That seems pretty obvious. That's what it would be. So, I don't know. I'm not sure that they really have that technology to go 4,000 kilometers, but maybe they do. I don't know. I guess London may find out. So, not good. That was a Daily Star article, for what it's worth. All right, this one. U.S. weighs Special Forces operation to seize Iran's enriched uranium stockpile. Head of UN nuclear agency warns extraction will be very challenging, as much of the material buried under bombed sites. Well, they should have thought about that before they bombed the sites. Trump administration is planning options to secure or extract Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium, with discussions entering on deploying the elite Joint Special Operations Command for the mission, CBS reported. Let's see. No decision has been made. One source told CBS the timing of the operation remained unclear. A White House spokeswoman said the preparations were the Pentagon's responsibility, while that agency did not respond to a request by the news outlet for comment. The operation would be extraordinarily complex. Much of Iran's uranium stockpile, estimated at around 450 kilograms or 992 pounds, enriched to 60%, lies buried beneath nuclear sites already bombed in last summer's strikes. Iranian foreign minister confirmed that the material was under the rubble. So I'm wondering how they're supposedly going to go in and get this when they are literally at war and bombing all sorts of places around Iran. So that seems like that's something that you would have thought of before you bombed the infrastructure there. The nuclear capabilities areas. Zero Hedge article. Phantom Ayatollah, question mark. Iran's new supreme leader has never been seen since taking office, amid widespread reporting that Iran had long ago moved into an emergency wartime decentralized command. Among autonomously acting units, serious questions persist as to the role of Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei, who replaced his slain father. longtime leader Ali Khamenei. What's clear is that the new, younger Khamenei, who may have been wounded in the early days of the strikes, hasn't been seen in any public way, not even on TV, throughout the war. There have not so much as been an official recent image of him being circulated. Well, clearly he needs Israel to create an AI version of him, just like they do with Bibi. This has raised obvious questions to the degree of which Ayatollah is actually running the country in the wartime response. Also, after the national security official Ali Larijani was killed, Larijani had been in the interim public face of the Islamic Republic before his death less than a mere week ago. There's been some reports that he was taken out of the country for surgery or something. I don't know if like to Russia or where, but anyway, yeah. So they're saying no one's seen him, and yet I guess people supposedly have seen Bibi Netanyahu. I don't know. No one knows. We're constantly being lied to, so you can't believe any of this stuff. All right, and then this one, world faces gas supply cliff's edge as Gulf's final liquid natural gas shipments approach ports. Carriers that departed from the Middle East before Iran's missile attacks began are due to arrive in the next 10 days. Yeah, it might be the last shipment, I think is what they're saying here. Countries around the world are facing a cliff edge as the flow of liquefied natural gas from the Gulf comes to an abrupt end in the next 10 days, when a handful of final tankers from the region reach their destinations. Yep. Qatar, which produces a fifth of the world's liquefied natural gas, had to stop exports after Iran blockaded the Strait of Hormuz at the mouth of the Gulf in the first few days of the conflict. It has since suffered enormous damage to its giant Ras Laffan LNG plant, which was attacked by Iranian missiles this week, sending gas prices in Asia and Europe soaring. But many LNG carriers that loaded at Qatar and the United Arab Emirates were already on their way to destinations before the war started, according to analysis by independent shipbroker Affinity, meaning that some customers are only now about to feel the pain of lost supply. Countries reliant on imports to power their economies will have to pay sky-high prices to compete for LNG supplies from the U.S. and elsewhere, switch to other fuels, or force households and businesses to use less. So yeah, that's kind of what we're facing here, and obviously more so in some of these other countries, but it's going to raise prices for everyone because it will be harder and harder to get. And this is all something that Mike Adams of Natural News has been talking about in the last few videos I've seen of him recently. Global energy crisis deepens as Middle East conflict threatens oil and gas supplies. Iran has effectively closed the Strait of Hormuz, a critical 21-mile wide maritime passage responsible for 20% of the global oil and a third of the LNG exports, using drone and missile strikes on commercial tankers, halting millions of barrels of oil and gas shipments. Key Gulf facilities, including Saudi Arabia's Ras Tanura refinery, Qatar's Ras Laffan LNG terminals, just mentioned that, and UAE's Fujairah port, have been forced offline by Iranian attacks, removing 7 to 10 million barrels per day, which is 10% of the global demand, from the market and triggering price surges. Tehran's blockade is a deliberate move to cripple Europe's energy security, already weakened by Russian gas cuts, pressure the U.S. into sanctions relief, and destabilize global markets, driving inflation, fuel shortages, and potential blackouts. U.S. gas prices exceeded $5 a gallon. Brent crude could hit $150 a barrel if the blockade persists, and Asia faces energy scrambles as liquid natural gas shipments freeze. Analysts warn of a looming recession and supply chain collapse in petrochemical-dependent industries. Western leaders are trapped between military escalation, risking war, diplomatic concessions, meaning emboldening Iran, or energy rationing, sparking unrest. The crisis exposes the West's dangerous reliance on Middle Eastern oil, forcing urgent diversification or austerity measures. So anyway, there's further info here, including a video that's embedded. Iran warns the U.S. ships in the Strait of Hormuz are legitimate targets. I guess that is a ship that's gotten hit or gotten attacked. Anyway, not good. I don't like where all this is going. All right, that was a Natural News article. All right, and then this one, a little departure from all of that. This is just something I came across. This is a story for Miss Emily, if she's out there. Las Vegas has fallen. Look at the price of this sad-looking cheese pizza. And when we say cheese pizza, we don't mean CP or the other thing that starts with CP that cheese pizza is often talking about. In this case, we're actually talking about cheese pizza. So this is kind of strange. I didn't really realize it was this bad, but I guess it's bad. And I was just in Vegas like the end of 2024 and January 1st, 2025. So I was just there, and I would agree with a lot of this. It says, there was a time when Las Vegas actually meant something to regular people. It was a place to go and blow off some steam, have some fun, gamble, eat cheap steaks, and drink free watered-down drinks. It was a place you went to feel like a big shot without having to be one. Cheap flights, affordable rooms, free drinks flowing, buffets stacked high, and just enough flash to make a working guy feel like he'd hit the jackpot. Vegas was a vibe back in those days. Same thing Disney used to be. It was a place families could go, make memories, and not feel like they just took out a second mortgage to do it. That version of Vegas is gone. Disney too, but that's a whole nother story. What replaced it is something cold, corporate, and a whole lot more expensive. I did notice that when we were there. And if you want to understand just how far things have gone, let's start with something as simple as pizza. And we mean actual real pizza here. Take a look at what it costs to order a plain cheese pizza at one of the biggest hotels on the Strip. So this is a post from Wall Street Apes, which is a pretty large X account. It says Las Vegas is an absolute scam. American shows what it costs to order a pizza at the MGM Grand, which, by the way, is where that's the hotel where David Copperfield's been performing all these years, and he's now had to shut down. He's shutting down his show, I think, at the end of April because of all of the times that he is mentioned in the Epstein files. David Copperfield is literally closing down his show because he's in the Epstein files. All right, so this is saying just a basic cheese pizza is over $47, and the prices go up from there. This is theft. Says, folks, that's just a basic cheese pizza pushing $50. How does a city built on giving people a good time turn into something that feels like it's squeezing every last dollar out of your wallet before you even sit down at a slot machine? Well, it's like we said earlier, corporations. We actually covered this story not too long ago and argued that Vegas was actually better when the mob ran it. And yeah, that's probably actually true. Vegas used to make its money by keeping you happy and coming back. Now they make it by charging nearly $50 for a cruddy pizza. But that's not just a strip. That's cracking. It's not just a strip that's cracking. What's happening in the neighborhood is also a mess. So then it talks about some of the areas around there, I guess. When prices are through the roof on the strip, the demand is meh at home. That means that business model is about to buckle. So anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting, and I'm sure if people out there are visiting Vegas, they've probably already noticed this. We did somewhat as well, and yeah, it certainly is very expensive. But it's not just Vegas; it's other places like that, unfortunately, that are devolving. So this is really a strange one. Do you guys see this? It says deliberate attack. RT correspondent recounts surviving an Israeli airstrike. Look at this guy here. You can see he jumps out of the way for his life, really, as a missile comes in. Reporter Steve Sweeney and cameraman Ali Rida Sabayati were injured in an IDF strike in southern Lebanon. So they were just reporting. He was filming, and this guy was nearly struck by this Israeli missile. RT correspondent Steve Sweeney and his cameraman had been injured in an Israeli strike while filming in southern Lebanon. They said an Israeli aircraft fired a missile at their filming position near this bridge, not far from a local military base. Rita said Israeli forces deliberately attacked the crew despite their wearing uniforms displaying their press credentials. I wouldn't say despite, but because. That's what I would say. They've been known to shoot and kill many people in the press and, people who were just there trying to help or whatever. Emergency crews and stuff. But, that makes you anti-Semitic if you say something like that. So be it. Whatever. Rita's camera captured the moment of the strike as he filmed Sweeney's report. The footage shows the missile hitting less than 10 meters behind Sweeney as he ducks for cover. Yeah, so anyway. This just shows where they were, I guess. And this is them removing shrapnel from Sweeney's arm, apparently. Thought that was crazy, though. Just because it's caught on camera, not that they're doing it. I'm not surprised whatsoever. Israel refuses to open the Al-Aqsa Mosque for the end of Ramadan. Mentioned that they had closed it last week on the show. No Muslims will be allowed to enter the holy site for one of the main Islamic holidays for the first time since 1967. The Al-Aqsa Mosque, one of the holiest Muslim sites in Jerusalem, has been kept closed by the Israeli authorities. Despite Muslims all over the world marking, however you say this, Eid al-Fitr, the final Friday of Ramadan. The compound was closed over the Iran war, and worshippers have not been allowed to mark the holiday at the site for the first time since 1967. So, I'm not that surprised. So they closed the mosque there on Temple Mount, and I've got another article here I've got to find it. We'll get to it eventually. There's a video clip of a missile hitting not too far away from the Temple Mount. So we'll get to that here in a minute. Another RT article, safe corridor opening up through the Strait of Hormuz. What we know so far, Iran appears to be allowing certain vetted vessels to pass the choke point and is reportedly working on a standardized process. Iran has signaled that it is ready to allow passage through the Strait of Hormuz to vessels from certain countries. Media reports and tracker data also suggest that a handful of pre-vetted tankers have already sailed smoothly through the safe corridor, with at least one shipping company allegedly paying Iran $2 million. The development comes as more than 15 tankers have been hit by drones and projectiles in the strait since the U.S. and Israel launched their war. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. That's the first time I think I've even seen a number. 15 tankers have been hit by drones and projectiles since then. As the Middle East escalation has roiled energy markets, the impact of a few tankers passing through has so far remained limited. Brent is still trading well above $100. This is what to know about the latest developments on the Strait of Hormuz. Who is allowed to pass? In short, not everyone and not everywhere. No kidding. Looking to see who they're talking about here. According to Lloyd's list, that's probably Lloyd's of London, I'm guessing. India, Pakistan, China, Iraq, and Malaysia are discussing transit plans directly with Tehran, as well as Turkey confirming clearance. Financial Times reported, citing maritime data, that at least 8 ships, including oil tankers and bulk carriers tied to India, Pakistan, and Greece, as well as Iran's own fleet, have sailed through. Yeah, so anyway, they are allowing a few select ships. That's what I was trying to point out here. And they're having to pay a pretty hefty fee, it looks like, to get through. So and then you've got President Trump out there saying if they don't open it up within the next 48 hours, starting yesterday, then they're going to bomb all of the electrical grid in Iran. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. Not looking good. I mentioned Mike Adams natural news earlier. This is a downloadable, book, but it's also an MP3 if you wanted an audiobook version of this. But it's called Choke Point, the Strait of Hormuz. Come open it, it says. So this is something that Mike put out with his BrightLearn AI engine, which I have not heard yet, but I did download it. I'm going to give it a try and see what it's like. It says, in the turbulent waters of the Strait of Hormuz lies the pulse of the global economy, a slender passage where the fate of nations and the stability of the world's energy supply hang in delicate balance. Choke Point, the Strait of Hormuz, come open it, is a gripping exploration of this critical choke point, revealing how its strategic importance shapes geopolitical alliances, military strategies, and the very foundations of international trade. This meticulously researched book delves into the strait's geographical significance, its historical role in trade and naval warfare, and its pivotal place in today's interconnected world. So anyway, it goes on here, but there is a downloadable free MP3 available here if you're interested in this. It's on BrightLearn's list of books, and in particular, it's an audiobook, which is sort of few and far between. There's not nearly as many audiobooks available on there. And we looked at this last week. I showed you the book that I published on here as well about music stuff that I do. So anyways, we'll link to that in the Substack post that I send out later in the week, probably Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. And then sad news this week. Mr. Chuck Norris has made the jump to hyperspace. Action star martial artist Chuck Norris dies at 86. Carlos Ray Chuck Norris died suddenly on Thursday morning at the age of 86, according to a statement from his family. Died suddenly, but he was 86. I'm not sure how sudden that would be, but anyway. He was surrounded by family when he died, according to the statement. While the family did not share his cause of death, the Walker, Texas Ranger star was hospitalized in Hawaii due to an unspecified medical emergency. Norris had celebrated his 86th birthday only 9 days earlier, writing on social media posts that he was in good health at that time. Norris was a family man who lived his life with faith and purpose, his family said. He inspired millions of people as a martial artist, actor, and symbol of strength, they said. Norris is survived by his second wife and his 5 children. So he was a 6-time world karate champion, held black belts in numerous other martial arts. And it talks about some of the different things he was involved in. So that's sad. Anyway, Chuck Norris. And I came across this one I was a little surprised about, relating to Mr. Norris. Look at this one. This was on RT. Why Chuck Norris was a hero to millions of Russian boys. Chuck Norris, the man who made chaos feel manageable. The news sounds absurd, but it cannot be ignored. Chuck Norris has died. To the world, he was a martial arts master, an actor, and symbol of strength. To us, he was a devoted husband, loving father and grandfather, an incredible brother in the heart of our family. His relatives said in a statement, the cause of death had not been disclosed and may never be. That alone has sparked a strange curiosity. What on earth could have killed Chuck Norris? Apparently, time. Carlos Ray Norris was 86. Of those years, 67 were spent practicing karate. In one of his final videos, he is still boxing, still moving lightly, still insisting that he never grows old. Norris began his journey in the mid-1950s while serving in the U.S. military in South Korea. That was where he first took up karate. He returned home with a black belt and quickly turned his skill into a business, opening a chain of karate schools. By the mid-70s, he had become a 6-time world champion. Along the way, he met Bruce Lee, to whom he taught the spinning kick, and Steve McQueen, who encouraged him to try acting. That advice changed everything. His first film, a low-budget Hong Kong action movie released in 1974 under titles such as The San Francisco Massacre or The Yellow-Faced Tiger, was so bad that it never reached American screens. Yet a few years later, after Norris had become a star, it was rediscovered and shown in cinemas purely because of his name. In other words, the film did not make him famous. He made the film famous. For years, Norris appeared in modest action films They were rarely praised by critics, but widely watched and consistently profitable. Those roles built up the image that would define him, a stoic, disciplined man who could step into chaos and restore order. Okay, so anyway, it talks about some of the other things that he was involved in, including Walker, Texas Ranger. I'm looking to see what Russia has to do with it. The uncertainty of the Russia of the 1990s that matter, the worse the world seemed around us, the more important it was to believe that somewhere justice still existed. Yeah, not in America, though. We know that. Even if only in American films, and if it existed somewhere, perhaps it could exist for us too. How many boys took up martial arts because of him? It's impossible to say. Some used those skills well, others less so, but the image he projected was always the same: discipline, restraint, and a sense of order in a chaotic world. In later years, Norris took on a second life not as an actor but as a legend of internet folklore. The Chuck Norris facts became a global phenomenon. Chuck Norris can divide by zero. Chuck Norris doesn't sleep with a teddy bear, he sleeps with a real bear. A king cobra once bit Chuck Norris. After 5 days of agony, the cobra died. Those jokes spread across languages and cultures, turning him into something of a myth. Not many people become the subject of an entire genre of humor, but he did. In Russia, he remained a familiar figure. He appeared on Channel 1's cooking show, gave interviews, and seemed surprisingly accessible. He was not just a distant Hollywood star, but someone who had, in a strange way, become part of our own cultural landscape. So I guess the folks in Russia really liked Chuck Norris and what he stood for. I thought that was kind of interesting. That's not something you really come across as far as these ridiculous Hollywood types. And, somebody who's affected people for a positive way coming from Hollywood. Anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. Trump officials sue Harvard over alleged anti-Semitism. Yeah, and you're surprised, just like I am. Prosecutors filed a federal lawsuit on Friday against Harvard University over alleged discrimination against Jewish and Israeli students on campuses after the October 7th, 2023 invasion of Israel by the terror group Hamas. Harvard allowed anti-Semitic mobs of students, faculty, and visitors to assault, harass, and intimidate Jewish and Israeli students, according to the Department of Justice. The school remained intentionally indifferent to the plight of Jewish students by selectively enforcing campus policies and allowing the conduct to continue, the DOJ said. Harvard also failed to deliver meaningful discipline to mobs that occupied school buildings and terrorized Israeli students. So I don't know if that really happened or not, but obviously if laws were broken, then something needs to happen, but I'm not sure that's what happened. What are they suing for? Harvard's actions violated Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which protects against discrimination based on race, color, or national origin. Now, what about religion? The Trump administration's lawsuit sought a court ruling to force the school to comply with Title VI. Prosecutors also petitioned the school to repay the federal funding it received, while in violation of Title VI, noting that Harvard is set to receive over $2.6 billion, billion with the B, in taxpayer funding under grants from the Department of Health and Human Services. A.G. Blondie released a Friday statement framing the lawsuit as an example of administrative policy. Yeah, they go hard on the anti-Semites, don't we? We know this. New lawsuit came nearly a year after Harvard sued the Trump administration for withholding federal funding. I remember that. Says Harvard is committed to making sure the Jewish and Israeli community remains safe and respected on campus, according to a Friday statement. Well, I mean, if they're apologizing, we just have to drop the subject, right? They apologize after all. Anyways, more craziness. All right, another one from WNG.org. White House asks Congress to clear the way for AI developers. Yeah, clear the way. Get out of our way. White House wants federal law to protect children and creatives children and creatives from harmful aspects of artificial intelligence, and at the same time boost American AI developers with fewer rules and more grants, according to its legislative framework released Friday. The four-page document outlines 7 categories of policy recommendations, starting with giving parents more tools for protecting their children and ending with guidelines for a federal policy that prevents states from directly regulating AI development. I'm wondering why they have Marsha Blackburn pictured here, because she's from my area. I'm looking to see if she's the one that's behind this. What is Congress doing? On Wednesday, Senator Marsha Blackburn, Republican, Tennessee, released her outline of a bill called the Republic Unifying Meritocratic Performance, Advancing Machine Intelligence by Eliminating, this is a long title, Advancing Machine Intelligence by Eliminating Regulatory Interstate Chaos Across American Industry, aka the Trump America AI Act. That's what is known for, slang term, I guess. In a statement to this website called World, she said the bill would protect children, creators, conservatives, and communities from harmful aspects of AI while boosting American AI development. I have my doubts. All right, headline USA. Something to look out for here. ICE agents to assist with airport security beginning tomorrow. But watch, no matter how great a job ICE does, the lunatics leading the incompetent Democrats will be highly critical of their work. That already has started, I think. So ICE agents will help the security efforts of the nation's airports beginning Monday, as a partial government shutdown is causing lengthy delays for passengers. On Monday, ICE, this is what Trump said, on Monday, ICE will be going to airports to help our wonderful TSA agents who have stayed on the job, despite the fact that the radical left Dems, who are only focused on protecting hardline criminals who have entered our country illegally, are endangering the U.S. by holding back the money that was long ago agreed to and signed and sealed contracts and all, Trump wrote Sunday on social media. But watch, no matter how great a job ICE does, the lunatics leading the incompetent Dems will be highly critical of their work. They will do a fantastic job. Tom Homan is in charge, he says. I actually like Tom Homan. I think he's one of the few people that Trump has brought in that is doing a good job, from what I can tell. A day earlier, Trump promised to send ICE agents to airports as Democrats in the U.S. Senate have blocked funding for the Department of Homeland Security over immigration enforcement concerns. Yeah, so I'm not sure how well this is going to be received, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. So something to watch out for if you guys are flying this week, which, some of you guys I'm sure probably do or will soon. You will notice some ICE agents most likely in the airport where you're at. So something to keep an eye out for. I don't think anybody's going to be shot or run over with a car or anything like that, like the Democrats are screaming about. But you just never know. Sweden's digital ID system hacked, public's data sold on the dark web. Sweden's sweeping national digital ID system has been hacked, with the public's sensitive data already being sold on the dark web. A hacker group calling itself Byte to Breach, B-Y-T-E, to Breach, has reportedly dumped sensitive source code tied to Sweden's national digital identity system. The incident is raising alarm over the risks of centralized control as governments worldwide push similar schemes. Yes, but they don't care, because it's not their data they're worried about. It's just our data that would be compromised. The group claims it breached CGI's Swedish division and accessed code connected to the national's digital identity system called Bank ID. Bank ID is the single authentication system used by millions of Swedes for banking, taxes, government services, and digital signatures. Hackers claim access to core digital identity infrastructure. According to reports, the leaked material includes source code, passwords, and encrypted keys tied to systems supporting Bank ID logins for the Swedish tax agency. Bank ID is not a niche tool as it serves as the backbone of Sweden's digital infrastructure. More than 8.6 million people in a country of just over 10 million rely on it for daily life. So it's basically everybody. Creating what critics warn is a dangerous single point of failure. The data reportedly surfaced on a known cybercrime platform called Breached. Breached is a dark web forum where hacked data is leaked and traded. I would say probably sold too. Shortly after it was leaked on Breached, the site was taken offline as part of a cybersecurity operation limiting independent verification of the full scope of the hack. However, it's unclear how much of the data was sold before the site was taken down. So there you go. Welcome to centralized command, apparently. That is crazy. So Sweden has been hacked. Gosh. So just know that that is also in store for us once that comes here. Another Slay News article. 200,000 foreign truckers could lose commercial driver's licenses as Trump's safety crackdown comes into effect. Wait a minute. Why do we have 200,000 foreign truckers? Because I'm guessing they mean illegals. Let's see here. Approximately 200,000 foreign truck drivers will no longer be able to renew their commercial driver's licenses, CDLs, following a new Department of Transportation rule that took effect this week. It marks a significant shift in federal transportation policy under Trump. The rule issued by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is aimed at tightening eligibility standards for non-domiciled CDLs and preventing what officials described as unqualified foreign drivers from operating large commercial vehicles on U.S. roads. Don't you think that's a good idea? Good grief. The final rule, titled Restoring Integrity to the Issuance of Non-Domiciled Commercial Driver's License, was announced in February. It came after a nationwide audit uncovered systemic non-compliance in the issuance of CDLs to foreign nationals by several states. Under the new regulation, eligibility for non-domiciled CDLs is limited to foreign nationals holding H-2A, H-2B, or E-2 visas. The rule also eliminates employment authorization documents as valid proof of eligibility and requires state agencies to verify immigration status through the systematic alien verification for entitlements system. So that'll make things much better when they verify it through the existing fraud-ridden government computer system. So yeah, that makes me feel much better. But at least they're doing something. So anyway, that one is on Slay News is where that is. Trump asked about potential ground troop deployment to Iran, says he won't discuss his plans, but points to poll claiming 100% approval and 90% support for war from MAGA. So this is the term that people use who are insulated from the truth, and it's called being bubble wrapped. Donald Trump, the President of the United States, is being bubble wrapped from all truth. If he actually believes that the U.S. citizens approve, 100% of the U.S. citizens approve and support this war, he is completely wrong. But, it's his war, and he wants to believe that, obviously. Trump pointed to an NBC poll when asked about a potential ground troop deployment in Iran. As the Gateway Pundit reported, CNN highlighted the polling data this week showing that 100% of MAGA voters approve of Trump. I just don't believe that. Unless MAGA is now defined as Ben Shapiro and, all of the pro-Israel people, Laura Loomer, people like that. So if that's the case, maybe you do have 100%. But that's the former never-Trumpers that are now considered MAGA. So, anyways, the poll further claims that the war with Iran has 90% approval and is just 5% disapproval from MAGA. I don't think so. I just find that very, very difficult to believe. It's a travel nightmare. Over 400 TSA officers quit. $2.5 billion lost. Airports in chaos as Americans pay the price for Democrats' political games. So I haven't been to an airport. I can't really confirm this, but that's what they're saying here. I don't know how bad it really is. Probably just depends on the area, depends on the airport. Says another day, another total disaster courtesy of the Democrats' endless political games. While radical leftists in Congress play chicken with America's security and pretending the southern border isn't a wide-open catastrophe, hardworking TSA officers are walking off the job in droves, and American families and businesses are left holding the bag. According to shocking new numbers dropped by the White House itself, 400-plus TSA officers have quit. So that's quite a few. $2.5 billion lost. American airports in chaos. Americans are stuck in the fallout, all because of Democrats' political games. So that's the cold, hard reality of what happens when Democrats refuse to do their jobs and fund the Department of Homeland Security like responsible adults. So I don't know. I'm not sure that that's that those numbers are accurate, but that's what the White House is saying. So just thought I would report that and mention it. It says on Saturday, Elon Musk is offered to cover the salaries of the TSA personnel during the ongoing partial government shutdown affecting the DHS. I would like to offer to pay the salaries of TSA personnel during this funding impasse that is negatively affecting the lives of so many Americans at airports throughout the country. Musk wrote in a post on his platform X. So how about that? He's such a terrible guy. He's so evil, though. And he's going to be the Antichrist someday, people think. No, not true. Now, he does, there's some bad stuff that he's been involved with, definitely. But if you're a rotten individual, you wouldn't offer to pay hundreds of people's salaries in a pinch like this. Yes, he will make his money back. Yes, he will get paid back, but you just wouldn't do that if you're an evil guy. Not that he doesn't have problems. I'm not saying that. 230 rescued as severe flooding strikes Hawaii. 5,500 ordered to evacuate as dam faces imminent failure. So here's the infamous governor here again that we saw so much during the fires in Hawaii. On Friday, heavy rainfall triggered severe flooding in Oahu, Hawaii's most populous island. The flood has resulted in 230 rescues within the first 24 hours. So we went from fires to floods. So we have floods now in Hawaii. So clearly they are trying to ruin Hawaii as much as possible using weather warfare. The Department of Emergency Management has warned that the Wahiawa Dam, located in northern Oahu, is in danger of imminent failure, prompting authorities to order the evacuation of 5,500 residents. Hawaii Governor Josh Green, in a post on X, announced the National Guard has been activated in response to the flooding. So take your pick. Either you can live in Hawaii and die by fire, or you can live in Hawaii and die by flood, by the actual flood, or by the dam giving out. So lovely, huh? Yeah, I don't think it's an accident. I'm sure many of you guys don't either. Most likely, you can attribute at least some of it, in part, maybe all of it, to weather warfare. Or at least geoengineering. Even if it hasn't been done on purpose, which my guess is it has. All right, and then this one, a little Bolsonaro update. We don't really hear much about what's going on in Brazil these days, but his health is not doing well. Jair Bolsonaro's son shares heartbreaking health update as Brazil's Lula regime slowly murders the former president. You know, he is in the role that Donald Trump was supposed to be in. They were trying to do the exact same stuff to Trump that they are successfully doing to Bolsonaro. Jair Bolsonaro's son, Carlos, has posted a heartbreaking update about his father's health behind bars. In a post on X, Carlos gave an update on his father's condition as he serves a lengthy prison sentence at the behest of Lula's socialist regime. He wrote, "I confess that for some reason today was one of the most difficult days when visiting President Jair Bolsonaro." It's funny that he calls him that. It's his dad. "Upon entering the room, I came upon that strong man passed out in a chair, head bowed, sobbing as he slept. I had to step back. I stayed a few minutes in silence outside, trying to compose myself before entering the room again. When I returned, he was still the same. I approached, stroked his head, and he didn't even react. They explained to me that due to the strong medications, his sensitivity is even more heightened. He even wears a bracelet with the indication fall risk. When he woke up, I chose not to say anything about what's happening out here. I just commented lightly on Augusto Nunes' new look, which drew a shock from him upon waking. My father remains in the semi-intensive unit with a weak voice, drowsy from the medications, and he complained of weakened breathing, certainly due to the third consecutive pneumonia after his illegal imprisonment. I witnessed the collection of more than 5 vials of blood for tests. I did my part with humility. He told me he appreciated my presence and that I would return tomorrow. I leave the hospital devastated, more than I honestly expected to be, but we carry on. Tomorrow's another day. So this is the guy here. And there's Bolsonaro. He's currently serving a 27-year prison sentence for allegedly plotting a political coup following his disputed defeat to Lula in 2022's presidential election. Yeah, the problem is he challenged the Brazilian election, and the guy that stole power, Lula, threw him in jail because he didn't like Bolsonaro pointing out that he cheated to get there. So he must pay the price, you see. Brazil's political climate has drawn numerous parallels to the United States during the Biden era, with the left-wing government aggressively prosecuting Bolsonaro and his supporters, the country's own version of January 6th. Yep. They had very similar things happening there. His situation is further compounded by ongoing health complications stemming from a 2018 stabbing when he was attacked in the abdomen by a Lula supporter during his presidential campaign. One of Bolsonaro's sons is expected to run for the presidency with fresh elections scheduled for later this year. Yeah, well, you can bet that his son will also be threatened some way as well. Because I don't think Lula is going to let that happen. All right, we've got a few different Substack posts here to look at. This is the first one. This is on the Wine Press. Palantir's Peter Thiel takes his deranged Antichrist lectures to the Vatican. His monologues in Rome were described by the Associated Press as one of the hottest tickets in the Vatican's backyard these days is for a 4-lecture series on the Antichrist. How about that? Palantir co-founder Peter Thiel is still rambling on about the Antichrist after drawing wide criticism for his remarks. Thiel is now taking his lectures to Vatican City. Last year, Thiel was interviewed by the New York Times, where he disclosed a number of his viewpoints. Wine Press covered some of his remarks last year. Ross Douthat at the New York Times confronted Thiel and claimed that what he is building with his technology might actually be ushering in the Antichrist and will be a tool he will use to control the masses. New York Times reporter says, yes, you're saying the real Antichrist would play on that fear and say, you must come with me to avoid Skynet, to avoid the Terminator, to avoid nuclear Armageddon. And Thiel says, yes. So then the New York Times reporter says, and my very specific question to you, you're an investor in AI, you're deeply invested in Palantir, in military technology, in technologies of surveillance and technologies of warfare, and so on. And it just seems to me that when you tell me a story of the Antichrist coming to power and using the fear of technological change to impose order on the world, I feel like the Antichrist would maybe using the tools that you are building. Like when the Antichrist be like, great, we're not going to have any more technological progress, but I really like what Palantir has done so far. Isn't that a concern? Wouldn't that be the irony of history that the man publicly worrying about the Antichrist accidentally hastens his arrival? Peter Thiel says, look, there are all these different scenarios. I obviously don't think that that's what I'm doing. The New York Times reporter says, I mean, to be clear, I don't think that's what you're doing either. I'm just interested in how you get to a world willing to submit to permanent authoritarian rule. Thiel says, well, there are these different graduations of these we can describe, but this is what I've just told you, so preposterous as a broad account of the stagnation that the entire world has submitted for 50 years to peace and safetyism. This is 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The slogan of the Antichrist is peace and safety. So, anyways, Thiel has given 4 paid off-the-record lectures on the Antichrist. Paid. Or at least his deranged view of him, organized by a 501c3 nonprofit called Acts 17 Collective. Acknowledging Christ in technology and society. That's the name of this. Yeah, that's the name of this organization. It's called Acts17collective.org. How about that? So he's being paid to give these lectures. And he's doing so at the Vatican. Isn't that weird? Anyway, that is a Wine Press Substack article. I just think that one's strange. And then this one is a Wise Wolf. Thought this one was worth repeating. For all of you bread lovers out there, you know who you are. Almost everybody is. How modern bread is killing you. Once you learn what really goes into modern bread, chances are you won't be feeding it to your family again. I want you to go get your bread, the loaf that's on your counter, the one in your fridge, whatever you have, flip it over and read the ingredients out loud. I will wait, he says. Enriched wheat flour, high fructose corn syrup, soybean oil, mono and diglycerides, calcium propionate, and then somewhere toward the bottom, azodicarbamide, which is a dough conditioner. Totally normal, widely used. Also, the primary ingredient in yoga mats and shoe rubber. That last part is true. I did not make it up. The same chemical that gives your foam mat that satisfying sponginess is in your sandwich bread. And the FDA is fine with it. And nobody mentions it. And we all just keep on eating the bread. This is where I tell you that 1 in 3 American adults is currently pre-diabetic, and that type 2 diabetes rates have gone up 700% since 1960, that celiac disease has increased 400% since the 1950s, and this is where you nod and think, yes, modern diet, sedentary lifestyle, personal responsibility. I've heard that speech. But here's what doesn't fit that speech. The farm laborer outside York, England in 1324 was eating 2 to 3 pounds of bread every single day. 2 to 3 pounds of bread every single day. 70% of his calories. Then going outside and building cathedrals that are all still standing while your knees ache on the stairs. No prediabetes, no gluten sensitivity crisis, no inflammatory bowel disease. Same food, same basic human digestive system, completely different outcomes. The food industry would like you to believe that this is because he moved more and you moved less. But the math doesn't survive contact with the actual situation, which is that this man was eating industrial quantities of the thing your doctor is now telling you to watch. If bread was the problem, he should have been in worse shape than you. He wasn't. So what changed? Everything changed. And none of those changes were made for your benefit. They took the Nobel Prize and used it to ruin wheat. So anyway, it goes into this whole explanation here of wheat. I'm guessing they're going to get into glyphosate as well. Although I don't see that. The 3 ingredients bread Wolf makes constantly and will not stop talking about. So I guess this is someone involved in this Substack. Note from the Wise Wolf, I make this constantly. It's stupid easy, embarrassingly fast, and tastes better than anything wrapped in plastic that needs 30 ingredients just to stay soft for 2 weeks. make it. Anyway, this is, I guess, some sourdough, maybe. Anyway, feel free to have a look at that. Yeah, here's the glyphosate residue ends up in the grain. Yeah, so he does mention glyphosate in here. Clearly, you can't really have that wheat discussion without it at this point because they use that as a drying agent. Anyway, I just wanted to mention this in case you guys wanted to have a look. It's on the Wise Wolf Substack. And again, we will send this out on the Substack that I email out to you guys probably Tuesday. Hopefully it'll be Tuesday. Anyway, so make sure you're on the email list to do that. And you can use the QR code in the upper left up there to get to the Substack. That's actually the Linktree page that we looked at the last couple of weeks that has all of my links on there. So you'll see Substack on there, one of the top ones. Leo Hohmann Substack. Will President Trump order U.S. ground troops into Iran, where they will almost certainly suffer heavy casualties? Had the decision already been made for him by foreign interests? We will soon find out. Most military analysts agree this would be a highly risky move, which Trump has said he has no desire to do, but Israeli PM Netanyahu says ground troops are necessary to complete revolution in Iran. Yes, and we have to do what Bibi says, don't we? Several thousand Marines are heading to the Middle East as the White House weighs its options and how to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and end the Iran war, which has already cost the U.S. $23 billion and at least 13 lives with no end in sight. The buildup of military personnel in the Middle East is leading to more questions about possible ground troops or missions tied to reopening the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran closed to all U.S. allied ships and shipping traffic since just after the U.S. and Israel attacked Iran on February 28th. This has been a source of major embarrassment to the Trump administration, which framed the war as one that would be easily won in the weeks leading up to the launching of its unprovoked air and missile strikes. I think the whole thing in Venezuela, I'm just adding this, I think the whole thing in Venezuela was sort of a mind, like a psychological experiment on Trump, because that whole thing with, removing the president and going in and grabbing him and then basically being in and out overnight kind of thing, I think that probably helped contribute to this whole Iran thing that made him think that he could just, make this an easy mission and it would be done and would hardly lose any lives. And I think he's finding out very quickly that that's not necessarily the case. Just from what I can gather what's going on here. It says Netanyahu weighs in. Bibi stated point blank on Thursday that a ground component, quote unquote, will definitely be needed to complete the revolution in Iran, and that U.S. and Israel hope to trigger with their air and missile strikes. Netanyahu admitted that this writer and others of this Substack here have been saying since before the war even started, that you cannot do a regime change operation with air power alone. No kidding. Ground troops will be needed. This is clear from history, and yet President Trump seems to have thought he could pull off such a daunting task as if with a magical wand. Yeah. Well, Bibi, again, is the real president, and he is directing the shots. So further information here, a little bit more on this, including some embedded videos on this Leo Hohmann Substack post. And then here's another one that we look at every now and then on this broadcast. Thought it was worth mentioning just because it's a little weird out there. Insight to insight, big distractions, meaningless gestures, and alien disclosures are next. This is something that I've heard from other people as well, not just on this Substack. It'll be here before you know it, and in the end, you'll still know nothing. Something is coming. It's going to be huge, distraction-wise anyway. The White House just quietly registered alien.gov. the internet is about to lose its mind, and the government is preparing what it will call a historic disclosure about UFOs. Well, you have to say UAPs now. They're not UFOs anymore. Extraterrestrial life and unidentified aerial phenomena. There you go, UAP. Before you get swept up in the excitement, I want to tell you what's actually happening, why this is happening right now, why the disclosure, quote unquote, is going to disappoint everyone who is hoping for something real, and what is genuinely, theologically, spine-tinglingly true about what has been flying around in our skies for millennia. Buckle up, we're going to cover wag the dog politics, government psyops, Project Bluebeam, demons, Nephilim, and the end of days. I promise you, the real story is stranger and more terrifying than anything alien.gov is ever going to publish. And before I go any further, let me pull that up because I actually do have, I didn't realize that this article mentioned that, but I did find this on Not the Bee earlier tonight. The federal government just purchased the URL aliens.gov. Federal government just purchased two new URLs, alien.gov, singular, and aliens.gov. They don't sound like they'd be related to illegal aliens, though one wonders if an extraterrestrial alien can even get the proper documentation for a green card. Neither of the alien URLs are active, but there's speculation their purchase coincides with President Trump's recent vow to declassify and make available files related to extraterrestrial life. Trump posted this on Truth Social last month. Based on the tremendous interest shown, I will be directing the Secretary of War and other relevant departments and agencies to begin the process of identifying and releasing government files related to alien and extraterrestrial life, unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, and unidentified flying objects, UFOs, and any and all other information connected to these highly complex but extremely interesting and important matters. Trump made that statement after Obama walked back his claims that aliens existed. There's Obama with the little flashy thing. Let's see. USA Today reached out to the White House to find out what these sites were all about. And the principal deputy secretary said, quote, "Stay tuned." And yes, and it has the alien head. And yes, the White House official included an alien emoji in a professional communication. Until those sites go live, you can always view all of the UFO files already made public via the National Archives website. And there's a link here, archives.gov link. So that's what this Not the Bee article said about alien.gov. So interesting that Insight to Insight on Substack also mentioned the same thing. This was just published yesterday. Yeah, you're going to hear a lot about aliens in the coming days. The White House quietly registered the new domains last week. Also aliens.gov, which I just mentioned, is linked to the executive office of the president, sits on Cloudflare servers, and currently returns error pages rather than grainy footage of little green men inspecting Iowa corn. Disappointing, right? Get used to it. The establishment press is starting to sniff around, and you probably haven't heard about it, but it's starting to pop up in some of my sources. In another week or so, it might be blowing up in your news feeds. You're welcome for the advance notice. What you're actually going to get, speaking of the Epstein files from above here, let's discuss what the government disclosure looks like in practice. Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act with overwhelming bipartisan support. The law explicitly stated the files could not be redacted. We know what happened there. On the basis of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity, including to any government official, public figure, or foreign dignitary. The Department of Justice released thousands of files on time. The files were a bureaucratic catastrophe of redaction. Several hundred pages were blacked out entirely with no visible content and no explanation offered. Survivors called it a slap in the face. One survivor asked the obvious question, if everything is redacted, where is the transparency? Well, that's a good question. So I think that's what they're going to say is going to happen with this too. Talking about Trump and the Epstein stuff. So it says, this is the template. There is enormous fanfare, massive page count, oceans of black bars, and the good stuff has already been extracted like the Oreo filling. If I don't lock the cabinet, 4 kids at home, and they do that. You are going to receive the alien equivalent of the Epstein files. You will get grainy footage of objects over Navy ships, heavily redacted incident reports from bases whose names you cannot read, an atmospheric phenomenon documented by surveillance equipment too classified to describe. The analysts whose names have been scrubbed will have found, quote, nothing conclusive. The government whose budgets were hidden from congressional oversight will remain hidden. You will spend a very exciting weekend combing through PDFs, and you will not find the Roswell bodies, the anti-gravity propulsion manuals, or the diplomatic cable from President Eisenhower to Zeta Reticuli. I think that's exactly right. I don't even know if we'll get that much, honestly. Anyway, so that's kind of what they're saying here on this Insight to Insight on Substack. So interesting that they are thinking about releasing all this stuff. I personally don't think that anything meaningful will be revealed until there is some sort of nuclear exchange. At that time, watch out. Once some nuclear event happens, which will happen in my humble opinion, once that nuclear event happens, whatever it is, wherever it is, at that point, just Katie bar the door. I think it's all going to change at that point. Everything will change. That will be the incident. And that's when they could bring in whatever they're going to do with the whole alien thing. And that's just my opinion, of course. All right. Now, this one is something I mentioned a little bit ago. Footage catches the moment Iran's missile fragment struck Jerusalem's old city. I'm looking to see here. Footage shows a moment a fragment from an Iranian ballistic missile struck Jerusalem's old city. According to the IDF, which they always tell the truth, the missile was intercepted. The fragments fell down, causing damage at a parking lot in the Jewish quarter around 400 meters from the Western Wall and the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound on the Temple Mount. So here's the footage. So what we're seeing here are fragments falling down. That's why the explosion there is not, I mean, it's large, but it's not like a missile hitting. It's fragments. So let me repeat it again here. So you can see that whatever that fragment is obviously was pretty large, but it's only 400 meters from the Western Wall and the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. And what did that rabbi say a few weeks ago? They would love to have an Iranian missile fall on the mosque and blow it up so that they could build their third temple. They said that. And then here, an Iranian missile fragment hits within 400 meters from the Western Wall and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. How about that? Footage shows the moment a fragment from an Iranian ballistic missile struck Jerusalem's old city. So this is the same thing, different angle. According to the IDF, missile was intercepted and fragments fell down. Okay, so that's what it was. So anyway, just pointing out that one came very close already. So don't be surprised if what that rabbi said actually happens. They want to get rid of the mosque and those buildings. They don't want to destroy the Temple Mount. So they have to be very careful what they're doing. So we'll see. That's why I said all along, it seems to me like the neater, the more tidy thing to do is to just create, using a tectonic weapon to just create an earthquake and knock it down. But maybe they won't do that. I don't know. All right, so here's more on Joe Kent. Joe Kent tells Tucker, imminent threat was from Israel, not Iran. Boy, those are words to live by, huh? Imminent threat was from Israel, not Iran. Ordered to halt the Charlie Kirk investigation. Joe Kent, former director of National Counterterrorism Center, who was President Trump's principal counterterrorism advisor, appeared on Tucker's show to explain his side of the story after stepping down. Kent announced his resignation on Tuesday, citing his opposition to the ongoing war with Iran and his belief that Iran posed no imminent threat to America, while asserting in his resignation letter that his wife died in a war manufactured by Israel in 2019 suicide bombing in Syria. So he's got some vested interest here. His wife was killed in Syria by a manufactured war from Israel. In the first public interview since resigning, Kent elaborated on his reasons amid reports emerging Wednesday that the FBI is investigating him for allegedly leaking. Of course, you got to be leaking if you resigned and blamed Israel. Then obviously it's your fault. Or improperly sharing classified information, a probe that sources say predates his resignation and is being handled by the FBI's criminal division. So they're going to try and put this guy in jail, I'm sure, or do something with him. Kent described how dissenting views were sidelined in the lead up to strikes. Key officials, including himself, were reportedly barred from direct briefings with Trump. There you go. Trump is bubble wrapped, just like I said before. He said that he spoke personally with the president before resigning, a conversation described as very respectful. So it's funny because Trump, when he was asked about it by the press, acted almost surprised, but he clearly had a discussion with him ahead of time. And that's when Trump called Kent weak. He said he was weak. Here we go. Charlie Kirk assassination and blocked investigation. In an emotionally charged segment, Kent discussed the September 2025 assassination of Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk, whom he knew personally. Kent recounted Kirk's last words to him in the West Wing back in June, before Kirk was shot in September. Kent, recalling Kirk, said, quote, "Joe, stop us from getting into a war with Iran," end quote. That was what Charlie Kirk said to him. Kent said Kirk had opposed escalation and faced pressure from pro-Israel donors. He revealed the NCTC, which is the organization here, has leads on potential foreign involvement but was ordered to halt. Kent said the investigation that the National Counterterrorism Center, the NCTC, was part of, we were stopped from continuing to investigate. There was still a lot for us to look into. There were still linkages for us to investigate that we needed to run down. So there you go. But I think this sentence right here sort of explains why they killed Charlie Kirk. Joe, stop us from getting into a war with Iran. He wanted to make sure we didn't go to war with Iran. And now Charlie, who had the president's ear, is no longer around. And, we've talked about that before, how that was a really good reason for Israel or somebody to get rid of him. Clearly, it was most likely Israel. Okay, I came across this one. This is another Substack, one that I'd not heard of. But I thought it was interesting. The Great Stitch. Why Google is using the language of Revelation. So that's kind of weird, huh? It says Google dropped a tool this week called Stitch, S-T-I-T-C-H. Their tagline is "Bring anything to life," quote unquote. Not build, not code, not develop. Bring to life. And he had the power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak. Revelation 13:15. That's not a metaphor. That's a sequence. Speak to an image. The image comes alive. The image speaks back. Google built a demo of it and called it a product launch. Nobody in the room flinched because nobody in the room reads Revelation. The tech bro saw the demo and wrote, quote, "This is insane," in all caps. He's right. He's wrong about why. He has no framework for what he's watching. No framework means no fear. No fear means no brakes. He thinks he's watching the future. He's watching the infrastructure of something the Bible warned him about, if he owned one. Here's what nobody in the AI space is talking about. Vibe coding, V-I-B-E, vibe coding is a liturgy, not a metaphor, a pattern, a ritual. A man speaks words into a machine, and something that did not exist begins to move, respond, and act. He doesn't build it with his hands. He speaks it into being. Speaking life into images is not a feature. It's a priesthood. A new class of creators who've decided that creation is no longer reserved for the Creator. Genesis 11:6. And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they began to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. God didn't call them stupid, he called them dangerous. Babel didn't stop because the project failed. Babel stopped because God stepped in. Nobody is stepping in this time not until the restrainer is removed. 2 Thessalonians 2:7, For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let, until he be taken out of the way. The mystery of iniquity is already working. Present tense. The restrainer, the Holy Spirit working through the church, holds back the flood. When the rapture happens, the dam breaks. I don't believe in the rapture, by the way, but maybe this guy does. I don't know. And the tools are already built, waiting. A machine that gives life to images, a platform branded with the first letter of 666, a payment system that tracks identity, communication, and commerce under one roof. Revelation 13:17, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. You don't have to take the mark to watch every piece of the system slide into place. The tech bro sees Stitch and thinks about productivity, about scaling, about 10xing his output. He doesn't see the liturgy. He doesn't hear the language. He doesn't recognize the pattern because he threw out the book that describes it. You still have the book. Open it. Revelation 13, Genesis 11, 2 Thessalonians 2. And the next time someone tells you that they built a tool that brings things to life, ask yourself, who said this first? So that is pretty crazy, huh? I read pretty much that whole thing. But that is called The Great Stitch, Why Google is Using the Language of Revelation. Pretty wild. Again, this show, breaking news that proves we are living in the end times. We couldn't even be talking about this kind of stuff a few years ago. And yet, here we are. This is a website that I'm not sure I trust, 100%, but I thought I would mention it just because I haven't seen a whole lot on this other newer Netanyahu video, but this one kind of is talking about not is he alive or dead, but what the video purports to be saying, what Netanyahu said, if it was even him. It says, watch, Netanyahu says, quote, Jesus Christ has no advantage over Genghis Khan. So isn't that lovely? Says, wow, this is a bit troubling. I do think there's some context here that I will break down for you, but first watch the clip. Questions asked here, are Christians okay with this? Netanyahu says, Jesus Christ has no advantage over Genghis Khan because if you are strong enough, ruthless enough, powerful enough, evil will overcome good. He basically said Jesus Christ is no match for weapons of war. Clearly, he does not know Jesus Christ, right? Clearly, he does not know Scripture. I'm just adding this, but I mean, what civilization did Genghis Khan produce? What came out of Genghis Khan? Nothing. So evil overcame, but only temporarily, is my point. And Netanyahu would certainly know about evil, wouldn't he? Anyway, the clips are here. I don't really have them patched in to listen to them, but it says anyone who has that worldview would seem to raise red flags as a leader, but I also said there's context here, so let me give that to you. Here's some of the detail on the book that he referenced, I guess in this video here. 1968 book called The Lessons of History. It's a short book typically listed at 119 to 128 pages with the main text around 100 to 102 pages. Condenses insights from their 11-volume Story of Civilization series. Yes, the book contains a passage very close to what you described, often paraphrased online as Jesus Christ is no match for Genghis Khan, or Jesus Christ has no advantage over Genghis Khan. The exact wording is, quote, nature and history do not agree with our conceptions of good and bad. They define good as that which survives and bad as that which goes under. And the universe has no prejudice in favor of Christ as against Genghis Khan, end quote. That was the actual quote. So that is what Netanyahu was talking about. And the lesson from the quote, at least in the interpretation of Netanyahu, seems to have of it, is that the world does not reward peace. The world only rewards and recognizes brutal force. Overwhelming, brutal force. That's it. Survival of the fittest, king of the hill, zero-sum game. I have to say that he's partially right, at least this side of heaven. There is that very tough reality to our world. I will also say that if the United States were attacked at the levels and volumes that Israel has been attacked over the years and decades, I think that the United States would respond with far greater force than Israel has used until recently. So there's nuance with this whole situation, but on its face, it's not a great quote, and time and place is not also good at all. Yeah, the person that wrote this is clearly somebody who is somewhat, at least, in favor of what Israel is doing over there. So I would disagree with that. But interesting that the quote that's come out from this supposed recording here of Netanyahu is that one about Jesus. Pretty wild. So this site is called Antichrist45.com, which this is somebody who clearly thinks that Trump is or will be the Antichrist, which I do not think that at all. But I do think that he will be instrumental in bringing the Antichrist into power. And we talked about that last week, how that might work. I think that if the thing that happens that we talked about last week, if that happens, where Trump declares himself the, quote, king of Israel, we could be looking at a situation where he appoints someone to become the Moshiach. He brings them in. I think that's King Charles. Because we know he has a very deep and respect and love for not only King Charles, but for the royals in general, from what I can tell. So if he hears that Charles has the bloodline that makes the Mashiach fit scripturally with the Torah, with what the Jews are looking for, I think he would bring him in at that point. I think he would bring Charles in at that point if he's truly the, quote, king of Israel. So anyway, all that said, that's not what this website's talking about. That's just what I mentioned last week. So this says the King of the Jews book. This writer here says, my channel can be a little boring at times. I tend not to go into weird and crazy things too often, but instead lean toward a more straight-up discussion of current events as they relate to Bible prophecy. That's what we do on this show. Sometimes, though, I just have to talk about crazy things, and this is one of those times. As a lot of us already know, there are quite a few strange coincidences and odd facts related to Trump over the years, as his name has seemed to be part of our culture going back a long time, even before becoming president. That matters because another very odd coincidence has now come to light involving Trump, and this is one so crazy it might just leave you shaking your head in disbelief. Okay, it says, now previously I've covered other strange facts involving Trump over the years, such as, and then he's got all these bullet points here. Let's just read a few of these. There's quite a few. The 1889 children's book called Travels and Adventures of Little Baron Trump, written by Ingersoll Lockwood, who penned a sequel in 1893 entitled Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey. Isn't that interesting? There were numerous similarities between Donald Trump and Damien Thorne from the Omen movies. The Back to the Future 2 movie character named Biff being based on Trump. Yeah. So there's lots of different things here. There are actually many more examples, but here's the latest one first let's go back in time, the year 1979. And quite a number of things were happening in the world in 1979 that seem to be still echoing even today. Among them was the Iranian Revolution. The Shah of Iran had fled in January of 1979, and Ayatollah Khomeini seized power in February, transforming Iran into an Islamic republic. That was quickly followed by the Iran hostage crisis as militants seized the U.S. Embassy in Tehran in November, beginning a 444-day standoff. There was also the 1979 oil crisis, which followed the Iranian Revolution as oil production dropped, doubling prices and causing worldwide shortages. And there was the Egypt-Israel peace treaty signed in March of that year. Amid these major stories throughout the world, in 1979, a novel was published called King of the Jews, a novel of the Holocaust written by Leslie Epstein. The book has been widely acclaimed in recent reviews over the years. For example, mature, brilliantly sustained, thoroughly engrossing, a Newsweek quote. Okay, here's what's really strange about the 1979 novel called King of the Jews. The book was written by a man named Leslie Epstein, but more specifically, his full name is Leslie Donald Epstein. This is a picture of Leslie Donald Epstein. As you can see, he eerily resembles Jeffrey Epstein. I don't see that. I don't know where that is. In Leslie Donald Epstein's book, the protagonist is a character named I.C. Trumpelman, with the I.C. standing for Israel Chaim, C-H-A-I-M, or Chaim. The book is about how Trumpelman is chosen as the head of a Judenrat, which was a Nazi-imposed administrative body in German-occupied European ghettos, forcing Jewish leaders to implement Nazi orders, including selecting victims for deportation. The very first chapter of King of the Jews is entitled The Golden Age, and as anyone who has even partially paid attention to Donald Trump since his re-election knows, he has claimed to have brought America into the Golden Age. Here is how Trumpelman is described according to the book Jacket. Again, this book's called King of the Jews. King of the Jews is a story of one such man, I.C. Trumpelman, who used his horrifying power to set up an authoritarian regime in the ghetto. His picture appeared on money and stamps. His word was law. Alternately, conman, charismatic leader, buffoon, and dictator. Trumpelman strides across these pages with extraordinary vigor. He is King of the Jews. His marriage, attended by Nazi officials, his organizational genius astounding, his will determining life or death for each of his subjects. Even those few who survived his reign could not decide whether he was a hero who helped his ghetto survive longer than any other, or the betrayer of his people. Sentimental about children, ruthless and vain, part savior and part executioner. He is finally a tragic man, a figure of apparently inexhaustible vitality ruling with an iron hand a kingdom of death. So that's the full quote there from the jacket of the book called King of the Jews. Isn't that crazy? I'm looking to see where else this is going here. I have not pre-read this. I stumbled across it and wanted to mention it tonight. It says that's odd because another pedophile named John Casablancas was connected to both Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump. Casablancas was the founder of the Elite Model Management and has widely been credited with creating the so-called supermodel. So there's a mention of this person in this book, I guess. For his part, Trump was involved in judging beauty contests run by Casablancas in 1991 and 1992 at a time when Trump was 45 years of age. I've spoken about this before, but from these pictures you can see how very young girls were in these contests. A couple years later, Donald Trump would sign his own daughter Ivanka onto Elite Model Management. Ivanka at that time was 15. Finally, the title of the book, King of the Jews, is very interesting, as the video on this other YouTube channel, I guess here, called Wretched Watchman, pointed out. Donald Trump was awarded the Crown of Jerusalem by the Israel Heritage Foundation. Isn't that nice? In addition, a year later, he was presented another award called the Covenant of Peace Award to the Prince of Peace. I covered this in some older videos from back then, but it is remarkable how these two awards didn't seem to set off any alarm bells with the evangelical Christians. That's pretty concerning, I must admit. Anyway, I guess that's all, but there's more details here, but I thought that was really crazy. I don't think he is the Antichrist, and that's kind of what they're alluding to maybe in this website, antichrist45.com. And there's a YouTube here embedded. I have not watched this, but my guess is it's probably more about what we're just reading on this King of the Jews book. Pretty interesting. I don't think the Don is the AC, but I do think he will help bring the AC to power. Probably very soon, I'm guessing. All right, let's move on. Natural news. New rule bars asylum seekers, DACA participants from commercial driver's licenses. I guess I sort of mentioned this earlier. Approximately 200,000 immigrant truck drivers across the U.S. have begun losing their commercial driver's licenses. I think that's good news. You got to get these dangerous people off the roads. They are killing way too many Americans. So we'll leave it at that, and we'll just move on from there. But we mentioned this one earlier. That's a natural news article. InfoWars article, going to cripple our economy. Small businesses sound the alarm over record diesel price spike. Yeah, I talked to somebody the other day who said that they drive a diesel truck and they're already feeling the hurt. Global economic growth could suffer because of diesel's close link to industrial production and freight activity. So wherever this is, that this Love's truck stop here, unleaded gas, $3.49 a gallon, which that's cheaper than what it is down the road from where I am. It's $3.69 right down the road from me, $3.69 a gallon. But diesel, $5.24. So man, that's pretty darn expensive. Probably not stopping though. I imagine it's going to keep going up. The latest AAA fuel data from across America shows that the national average diesel price at the pump has jumped nearly 40% this month, surpassing the 2022 fuel spike that followed Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Yeah, and see, that's how, everything moves by truck. So it's going to be affecting everything. So there's a bit more here on this. If you guys are interested, that's an InfoWars article. I thought this picture was interesting. Key history, proof positive that the Rothschild-Epstein network has run everything for 100 years. Jay Dyer breaks down how the intelligence establishment became closer aligned with Israeli interests. So you see that you got Epstein at the head of the Rothschild empire. Occult researcher and philosopher Jay Dyer lays out how American intel agencies became aligned with Israel. So that's embedded here. That's the full video. I think it's about an hour long. I watched it earlier today. So yeah, he gets into this. Did 1909 painting of Trump airship predict the president's UFO file disclosure plan? He does get into that a little bit. Daniel List, a.k.a. the Dark Journalist, talks about that. Reveals war between ancient mystery schools over their biggest secrets. Here's Daniel List. So he does good work, and he's really into the alien disclosure thing, which I personally don't think, like we read about earlier, I don't think it will amount to much of anything. Here's a Not to Be article. This one goes with a YouTube as well, and I'll load that up here in a second, just to show you a little bit from it. This newly upscaled moon footage is one of the coolest things I've seen in a long time. Now, the people that wrote this article, whoever this is, Dr. Tart on Not to Be, is a definite believer in the whole moon landing. And I personally think it's a fraud. I don't think we ever went to the moon in 1969 and those years after, at least not by NASA's description of what happened, no, that was completely fake. I think there's way more evidence to prove that none of that was real. So I am a naysayer in that. And so with that in mind, let's read what this says. This is what Dr. Tart says on Not the Bee. Every once in a while, something pops up online that makes you stop and go, wait, is this real? The haters will say none of the moon landing was real. So the haters, they always have to frame it as the haters. I don't hate anybody. I just want the truth. So I would just give that little sidebar there. Behold remastered moon footage, according to this guy. What you're looking at is actual film. Let me play this. What you're looking at is actual film, according to this guy, from the Apollo 15 mission shot on the moon surface in 1971. Yeah, I call BS, don't you? It was upscaled by moon enthusiast Mike Constantine and posted earlier this week. Well, first of all, where did he get it? And, you know, most people are going to go right to, oh, well, it's got to be AI. And who knows? The next thing they say here, though, is, no, it's not AI. So we'll get to that here in a second. So with that in mind, they show the up close of the astronaut. Now, this video footage is clearly, you know, they're rolling around in the moon dune buggy here somewhere. But who says this has to be on the moon? Yeah, it's 100% real, but they could just be on some backlot somewhere, you know, in the setup that they used in 1969 in the military base in New Mexico. They could be there. We don't know. So to assume that the footage that we're seeing is happening on the moon is a huge assumption in my part. The moon dune buggy, yes. And how would they get the moon dune buggy with all of its wheels and mechanics on board that little tinfoil spaceship? I don't think they could. So anyways, this video footage we're seeing here has been greatly enhanced, according to this guy, remastered moon footage, right? So here's what Mike Constantine, the guy that supposedly did that, says. Apollo 15 lunar rover footage upscaled and interpolated to 60 frames per second. Incredible upscale footage from on board the Apollo 15 lunar rover captured by Jim Irwin using the 16 millimeter DAC camera. The footage has been upscaled and interpolated to 60 frames per second and synchronized to the mission audio by Moonpans, which is this guy. That's his handle. Original footage source, Apollo Flight Journal. Full video and comments. Just to be clear, this is not AI. No one generated this. No one, quote, recreated it. But you don't have to. You could have easily taken the original footage and made it look better, and the original footage may have been really grainy based on time and how long it had been sitting around in the, on the film, in the whatever cans they were stored in. And now this is a digitized, much better looking version of it. And what the original actors saw, that doesn't mean they're on the moon. That's the whole point that I'm getting to with this. Yes, it's real footage. Yes, it's cleaned up. Yes, it looks way better. Does it have to be on the moon to make this? I mean, it could easily be a Hollywood set. So I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. It doesn't have to be AI generated. It could just be actual footage they had gotten that is fake footage. So here's what, I'll just finish this out. It says, it looks like someone brought their iPhone camera to another world. The motion is fluid. The detail is sharp. The lunar rover glides across the surface in a way that feels too immediate, too present, like it shouldn't exist in footage that's over 50 years old. And here's the part that really gets you. This is what they saw, unless, of course, you are one of the haters who says it was all fake. I'm not a hater, man. I just want the truth. I don't think this is true. This is what it looked like to Irwin and the others who were there, standing in that silence, looking out over that landscape that Buzz Aldrin famously described as magnificent desolation. So that's the official full story here on Not the Bee. Now here's the other thing I wanted to point out. All right, so here it is on YouTube, right? So I just clicked on the link from the Not the Bee article and went straight to this MoonPan's Apollo 15 lunar rover footage, upscaled and interpolated to 60 frames per second. So first of all, it's only got 255 thumbs up and 26,000 views. It was published 4 days ago. 255 thumbs up. I wonder how many thumbs down there are, first of all. I didn't vote, by the way. Here's the other thing. There's only 32 comments, and all of the comments are pro that this is real. Pro moon landing was a success. This is incredible. This is amazing. See, outstanding, incredible, great work, well done, looks amazing. Those brave men. Next, please clean up the audio. Anyway, but they're all positive comments, and that's all there are. There's 32 comments, so only allowed comments are being published on this video. That is really suspicious. Now, part of that is you're going to have a lot of what this guy's calling haters. Not this guy, but the guy that wrote the Not the Bee article. People who don't believe. People who don't believe this is real. I do think it's real footage, but it ain't from the moon. So I would just leave it at that. So in other words, this is out there. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but the Artemis thing is coming up, and I know my good friend Bart Sabrell is going to be posting a rather lengthy essay on X, and I will repost it when we post it. We're working on that. He's already written the article. We're working on a couple of other things to make sure that it gets out there where it needs to reach to. And it'll be really interesting with regard to the Artemis flight that's supposedly coming up on April the 1st, which we talked about that last week. Yeah, it's definitely not AI because they said so. That's true. Yes. Well, I don't think it's AI. I mean, it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't need to be. It can just be their old grainy footage from when they're wandering around the Hollywood set. It doesn't have to be green. It doesn't have to be AI, And then this guy thought he did a really great job by cleaning it up and made it available to the world. I'm sure he believes it. The guy that did it. This guy, MoonPans. Anyways, enough of that, but I just thought that was rather interesting. All right, vaccineimpact.com. Let's keep moving here. Officially an energy crisis, food rationing, panic buying, planes grounded, stay-at-home orders, and other COVID-like restrictions just ahead? ? So I don't know if that's. You can see that they could try that. I don't know if it would work. Perhaps it would. The world is now finally officially in the midst of an energy crisis due to the Iran war and the inability of the U.S. to open back up the Strait of Hormuz. And governments in many nations in the U.S. and Asia are now calling for COVID-like measures to be put in place to keep people at home like they did during the scamdemic. This urgency and fear has not reached most in the U.S. yet, however, as most Americans go about their daily business, not fully realizing what is happening in the outside world due to the coordinated work of the U.S. media to attempt to shield this so far. The International Energy Agency, the IEA, is calling for people to cut oil demand by working from home, flying less, and driving slower. The IEA's members include US, UK, and Japan. So this is officially an energy crisis now, and the last time this happened in the U.S. was in the 1970s under President Carter. Most Americans alive today did not experience that. It was so long ago. Yeah, I don't even remember it. I mean, I was around, but I was too little. So anyways, I don't know. Food rationing, panic buying, planes grounded. I don't know if we're coming to that, but that's what this guy's saying on Vaccine Impact. I'll leave this one to you guys if you want to take a look at that. Just trying to get through everything tonight, so we'll cut a few of these a little short, but I thought that one was pretty interesting and maybe a good perspective to check into. GeoWatch for this week, we had Global Alert News. Weather whiplash hits U.S. with California heat wave and Midwest winter storm recovery A dramatic weather divide is unfolding across the United States. The weather is getting wilder. Some see a dire signal in the data. Extreme U.S. heat wave smashes all-time hottest March. CIA accused of poisoning the sky with toxins as files expose secret weather control agenda. Criminal climate engineering operations are finally being exposed, not a moment too soon. So, latest global news right here. And yeah, let's take a look at this whole Daily Mail article that came out. I reposted that on, a link to it at least, on my Facebook page. And Mr. Dane was, let's just say he was happy to see that this was released. Obviously, there were some things that probably weren't necessarily stuff that he agreed with, but overall, I think he was relatively satisfied with the way it was worded. So here it is. Here, this was the full post here down the middle column. There's a lot of info here, and then videos embedded of his Tucker Carlson interview, and then RFK also talking about ending mass experiment, crime against humanity. So there's quite a bit here on this post on GeoWatch, and there's a link to the Daily Mail article as well. But this is mostly Dane's response to what the Daily Mail said, if that makes sense. Daily Mail just published the most objective report yet on the climate engineering issue. We are gaining ground in the desperate fight to expose the climate engineering weather warfare assault. My response to the Daily Mail is below, letting them know your opinion will further help the cause. So here is just their X post, I guess. CIA accused of poisoning the sky with toxins as files expose secret weather control agenda. And then Dane says, deepest thanks to Daily Mail US for courageously covering the dire threat posed by global climate engineering operations. Thank you for featuring Geoengineering Watch. Full disclosure is desperately needed. So there is your disclosure. That's the disclosure we need to be talking about, not UFOs. If UFOs and UAPs and all that stuff is real, which I personally think it is, the timing of that won't be until most likely whatever nuclear event happens. Not the real, whatever's going to happen will happen after some nuclear event. Before that happens, though, the real battle, what needs to be exposed is that geoengineering is happening worldwide, globally. That's just my 2 cents here. CIA accused of poisoning the sky with toxins. So that is, a chunk of the article from Daily Mail. And then the article that Mr. Dane put together I thought was really good, certainly worth checking out. So that is on geoengineeringwatch.org. Now, speaking of that, let's take a look at the scheduled weather here for the upcoming March 28th to April 1st timeframe. So this is what we're looking like. Most of the U.S. is well above normal, especially out west. Back east, slightly cool. This is March 28th to April 1st. So looks like it's mostly going to be warm. They'll be able to keep parts of the U.S. cool or cooler. You can see Alaska is a little bit as well, a little bit cooler. But you have quite a wide range here, from above normal to below normal, just in the state of Alaska, which it's a huge state, but pretty amazing that you have both. And then let's look at the climate reanalyzer just quickly here. We have, starting really now, or in the next 1 to 3 days, 11 degrees above normal where I am, but 23 degrees out west, 23 degrees above normal, 22 degrees. So very, very warm out west in the next few days. Really pretty much all over the U.S. except for the extreme northeast. 4 to 6 days, really basically the same. So this is from about the 25th onward. And then look at this. 7 to 10 days out there, bringing the cool back in, at least somewhat. 5 degrees below normal where I am. So the eastern half of the U.S., starting around the 28th, will be a little bit cooler. Now they're showing blue here, but it's really still just, 10, 11 degrees below normal. And then down here it's 4 degrees below normal. So it's not really cold like you might get from that picture. But we could tell from this other one here. In that same date range. This is what you would consider the colder area. It's just really near normal, below normal temperatures in that same date range. So it doesn't look like it's going to get way cooler, maybe just a little bit in the coming 10 days or so. If you missed the last week or two on this show, I think I mentioned before that the QR code in the upper left corner takes you right to this page. Also, you can just go to Linktree / the Diamond Report, and let me put up the actual banner here so you can see what I'm talking about. Linktr.ee. Linktree is how that's pronounced. Linktree / the Diamond Report takes you right to this page that we're looking at. This is all of the various links that have to do with this show, starting with the top one here as the Substack post, Substack link. So if you want to be on the email list, which looks like this, you can go to diamonddisc.substack.com. That is my Substack list. So please make sure you're on there. It's totally free. Just an email list, and I will send you guys all of the links and everything I talked about tonight on that, including links back to the program as well, the actual show. So we have Substack, Subscribestar, and the YouTube channels, and so on and so forth. Pretty much everything that I have links to, even including other social media platforms, not just Facebook, but Telegram and Minds and Gab and MeWe and some of these other platforms that I'm on as well. So that is how you get to it. You can use the QR code or just go to Linktree. The other option is to get there. I also forwarded this URL to it, which doesn't always work for me, but it probably will work for you. The diamond.report also takes you to that Linktree page. So anyways, that kind of is a jumping off point for all things related to the show. So yes, and make sure that you're on the Substack if you're not already. And thank you guys for subscribing, which again is totally free. And make sure you're subscribed on the YouTube channels as well. That always helps me, and it's a free and easy thing to do. And I certainly would appreciate that. And what else here before we go tonight? Let me take a look at the comments, and there's a whole bunch. So let me see if anything's jumping out at me before we call it a night. I know it's getting a little bit late. Before we go, I want to show you this. I got this present given to me. I don't know if you guys can see this or not. It's called Build Your Own Conspiracy Theory Kit. It's kind of like a it's not really a game, but it's kind of like that, right? It says 451 magnetic word tiles that reveal the hidden truth. So you can see it there. Word tiles. So those words are across these magnetic. You put these on your fridge. These here. There are some of the different tiles. You just separate these and you put them on your fridge, and you create, strings of conspiracies. Like this one that's written on the box here says, "Did you hear?" ? That's one tile. Elon Musk is another tile. Is building secret satellites to hide his avocado toast from George Soros. So you can create your own conspiracies. See? And even in the box, they have how to make your own tinfoil hat. So isn't that handy? I just thought that was lovely. But at the bottom part is what cracks me up. Magnetically sticks to your fridge, filing cabinet, or if you're vaccinated, to any part of your body. That is freaking hilarious. See the bottom block down there? Yeah, it's called Build Your Own Conspiracy Theory Kit. Somebody gave that to me. I thought that was really, really funny. I just want to share that with you guys. All right, let's take a look real quick at the comments and see what I've missed. Sir Marty says, check out Joshua 11:22. It looks like the Gaza Strip was never part of the land that God gave Abraham. I always thought it was part of Judah. Huh. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Thanks, Marty, for posting that. Yeah, I didn't know about that. Dean says Netanyahu was complaining they attacked a civilian area. The audacity, criminality, spoken like a true war criminal. Yeah, that's all that Netanyahu and company have been doing, right? Is attacking civilian areas. They love that. Hope you guys have a blessed week this week. I hope we can stay out of World War III, but it's looking like we're inching that way ever so much each and every day by Trump and team. So unfortunately, that does seem to be the way things are unfolding. So I would just suggest that you keep Jesus very, very much front and center in your life, like I'm trying to do, and stay as close to him as possible, first and foremost, and keeping your family as well, keeping your family close and safe with you as well. And I know you guys know that, but I'm just reiterating really is all. So thank you guys for being with me tonight and hanging out in this very, very long broadcast. And we'll have this posted at some point, probably tomorrow or Tuesday morning. It depends on how quick I can get it edited and reposted and everything. And hope you guys have a blessed week this week, and we'll do it again next week. We have next show will be the 29th. March 29th, so we'll do it again then, and that will start at 9 p.m. Central Time. And I haven't forgotten, we're still going to do a special show in the next few weeks with Russ Tanner. So we'll have a special Diamond Report very soon. I got to get with Russ on that and get it scheduled, but he's still very much open to doing a live stream with me. So we'll have a guest show. We'll have, instead of a news show, we'll do a guest show 1 week coming up. It probably won't be this coming Sunday, but it will be pretty soon. I would say within the next few weeks. So we'll try and get to that as soon as possible, and we'll have Russ on the show, and we'll talk about everything related to SAI, meaning geoengineering, and everything he's been dealing with lately, and being kicked off of Facebook and not allowed back in, and all this other stuff he's been through. So we'll do that in the coming weeks, and hopefully we'll get to a little bit of news as well. So love you guys, and blessings to you all, and we will talk again next week.